He's a radio DJ and a social media entrepreneur, and she's a Rappler multimedia reporter and award-winning documentary producer. Please welcome Casey Montero and Patricia Evangelista.
Good morning, everybody. How are you guys all doing today? This morning? Good?
Awake?
Wow, you're tall.
They put me on an apple box to minimize the headroom, but
Hold
I
on,
think
like,
I'm a little bit taller than
that's
you
the way
now.
it is.
There we go.
How are you guys all feeling this morning? Great. I hope you guys are in store, happy to be here. I know that we are happy to be here. This is the Manila Social Good Summit 2013. And Pat, I see that you've traded your Kevlar vest for a dress. You look quite nice.
I thank you very much. My bosses are under the mistaken assumption I know what I'm doing today. So let's all pretend, yes? Okay. We'd like all of you to rise for the national anthem. Please be seated, everyone.
Not since the invention of the wheel did something change life at such a fundamental level. 2 words rewrote the rules: social media.
Right now, the whole wheel is working on. I'm going over.
Internet video becomes the most watched medium. Historic events reverberate.
Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
Parodies become hits. And bad behavior shamed. Social media changes the way you get the news. The way people react to governments. The way people connect to each other. More importantly, it changes the way people help people. Conversations lead to action. A lost grandfather is found. A street sweeper finds compassion.
More than 1 second floor, Ace Express and Ansem Appliance, men's accessories, Forex, customer service.
A job well done, rewarded.
Dumb ways to die. So many dumb ways to die.
Information campaigns go viral.
Tayo na pong magbayanihan.
An angry people finds its voice. The crowd can do things institutions can't. Curb greed, save lives, solve the wicked problems. The social media revolution is here. From collective insight to collective action. Tomorrow begins today. PH plus Social Good, the Manila Social Good Summit 2013 is brought to you by Rappler, Google, and the United Nations Development Program. This event was made possible by our partners, Aboitiz Equity Ventures, and the Asian Institute of Management. Our sponsors, Globe, Champion Detergent Bar and Powder, and special thanks to PLDT Home, McDonald's, and San Miguel Corporation.
So the Social Good Summit is a global event that has been taking place annually since 2010. The premise for this global summit is to come up with innovative ways to use technology and social media to solve the world's problems.
In the Philippines, no other problem has an impact as great and as large in scale as that of natural disasters. Did you guys know that in the Philippines, actually the Philippines is the third most vulnerable country to climate change and disasters in the world? And our capital, Metro Manila, is the second most vulnerable city. More than just another summit, today's event signals a long-term approach to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction in the Philippines. Last year, Rappler's Social Good Summit aimed to inspire. This year, it is time to act.
So our hashtag for today, and you'll see it back there, is hashtag 2030now. In short, it's our way of thinking long term. We know that 2030 is 17 years from now, but today we need to think about concrete action steps that will lead to a better future.
So right now, you guys, the Wi-Fi is free, so please go ahead and start tweeting.
So let's trend this hashtag 2030 now.
So today's event is also being live streamed on the front page of Rappler.com. So maybe you guys can tell your friends with the hashtag to watch on Rappler.com. You may, see yourselves there. You can also go on to PH+SocialGood.org. We are kicking off the Global Social Good Summit right here in Manila right now this morning. So again, use the hashtag 2030now and tweet about the event. What we're doing actually is creating a map. So if you guys, the more you tweet, the more you share, the more you at your friends, the more chances you have on showing up on our map. So please, again, tweet now. Tweet as much as you can.
And if you don't already know, we're looking for heroes. So you've seen the Rappler t-shirts, we're looking for heroes, and every person can be a hero. So these are people who can allocate a year, just 1 year of your time, and it's not every day 24/7, volunteering to use their talents for social good. Depending on what you do best, we have a job for you. So for more information, you can visit our Heroes Needed booth down at the lobby.
Anything you can do, right? Whatever it is, we'll find a place for it.
We'll find a place for you.
That's what my mother said. The Global Summit is organized by a group called PH+SocialGood. Our very own Maria Ressa is one of the 5 global advisors. After today's event, Maria is flying to New York to participate in the Social Good Summit there. She is one of 2 global advisors who will sit down with Melinda Gates of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to report about the outcome of today's local summit. Why don't we go ahead and introduce 2 of our first speakers. Toshihiro Tanaka is currently the UNDP country director in the Philippines. He implemented the One UN Joint program in Pakistan.
And we all know her. Maria Ressa is CEO and executive editor of Rappler.com. She's been a journalist in Asia for more than 25 years, most of them as CNN's bureau chief in Manila, then Jakarta. She's also my boss, so a round of applause, please.
Magandang umapo sa inyong lahat. Good morning, everyone. Maria Ressa, CEO, Rappler. Secretary Lucy Sterling, Climate Change Commissions. Nice meeting you again. Senator Lauren Legarda, I think she's coming. Andrew McGrinche of Google. Patrick Meyer, digital humanitarians. Netizens, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Again, good morning to all of you. Do I have a presentation over there? All right. On 26 September 2013, next Thursday, the United Nations General Assembly will be convening around the central theme of post-2015 agenda. In anticipation for the deadline of the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, by end 2015, discussions on the new development agenda beyond 2015 are being conducted in most of the countries across the world. Starting last year, global consultations are being conducted to learn the different developmental challenges being faced by people worldwide, which then help inform member states to decide on the post-2015 framework. Right. Overall, 16 national consultations have been conducted. 12 thematic consultations also have been conducted globally. There was a global outreach and online consultation which called What We Want. Philippines is one of the 16 national consultation countries, and then we have conducted a lot of workshops and then forum with civil society and UN agencies and government counterparts, and came up with, to the end, the result had been summarized in the high-level panel report on post-2015 agenda to the Secretary General. It says, our vision, our responsibility are to end extreme poverty in all its forms in the context of sustainable development and to have in place the building blocks sustain prosperity for all. Furthermore, the UN envisions a new global partnership that enables transformative people-centered and planet-sensitive agenda. With the theme, #2030Now, the 2013 Social Good Summit seeks to contribute to the post-2015 debate by opening up conversations on how innovation technology, new media, and new digital tools can pave the way to a better future by 2030. With this, the summit aims to bridge the gap between our world's toughest development challenges and long-term solutions by finding new answers to all problems, focusing on innovative solutions for the future and activating the power of everyone's global network. Two of the most serious challenges that threaten sustainable development globally are climate change and disasters. Okay. And the World Report really proposed a new data revolutions to be one of the target agenda. That means how to promote people's participations in the data collections, assessment of the performance. I think this is one of the things we are trying to do here. Sorry. Also about in my world, crowdsourcing for post-2015. In fact, in the consultation process, we have done a lot of social media networking, and which resulted in this My World, yes, crowdsourcing for post-2015. Philippines ranked number 3 in the world in terms of the voting. We vote so far 54,000 voting. Cynthia of the United Coordination Office has been spearheading this effort, and we are hoping to get more. And the Secretary Dinky of the Department of Social Welfare is going to receive an award from Millennium Campaign in New York for outreach, Millennium Campaign for outreach. Sorry, that's what I wanted to also inform here. Again, these two of the most threatening challenges, climate change and disaster, we are going to speak today, we are going to discuss today. Their impact could easily take away whatever gains, as you know, any country may have on development. Therefore, the significance of addressing the threat of natural disasters and climate change cannot be overemphasized, especially for a country that is prone to catastrophe, such as Philippines. It is one concern that we must increasingly incorporate into our overall development agenda in the 21st century. Let me just. Many of us here have in fact seen and directly experienced the far-reaching damage that typhoon, floods, and like landslides create in Philippines, like Ondois and Hagabad, and also Typhoon Pablo. We are struggling to recover from the Typhoon Pablo effect, impact in Davao Oriental and Compostela Valley. And all right. I'm just trying to gather my own recollections of the memory where I worked in Myanmar, Pakistan, and also here in Philippines. What happened in Myanmar in 2008 when Cyclone Nargis hit the lower part of Irrawaddy Delta, what happened is no information was shared. Actually, in rural area of Myanmar, they don't have any electricity. They have only probably in one village one TV, and then run by their own batteries. There are no SIM card, or SIM card is very expensive over there at the time, almost $5,000 one SIM card. So no one really had that mobile telephone in the rural village. What happened is no information was shared with the public on the ground. And therefore, although this information was available, it was not really widely shared, and then no alert was made most of the people on the ground. So what happened is basically the May 2nd, when it hit, people were unaware, people were not prepared, and people are just exposed to the vulnerable threat. And therefore, around more than 100,000 people, government estimate 140,000 have been killed by this disaster. So we've been really working very hard on the ground how we can really recover and rehabilitate the areas, and also dealing with national disaster risk reductions effort. So compared to that, when it happened to Philippines in Pablo time, we have been informed about the route, and then about the size, and about the issue, or kind of action need to be taken. I was looking at what kind of alert it was given. It's basically alerting mountain people to be alerted landslide, and then not adventure to the sea. However, still, I think the detailed information on what action need to be taken is still a challenge for the people where to go. Although it's coming, but where you're going, how you can save yourself, or what is the evacuation point, and then what the safety locations you can be. So some of the evacuation points, like the school or clinic, I think, have been also washed away, and then many people also lost their lives. So those are issues still we have to deal with. This is the Typhoon Pablo response of the United Nations and humanitarian country team. Within a week time, we had appeal. We had responded relatively quickly compared to any other disasters I have been experienced. All right. This is the map of the Pakistan flood in 2010. Almost 20% of the land of the Pakistan was flooded at the time. Oh, let me see. Over there. Oh, okay. And what we did is using satellite image, and they have identified the affected areas and affected populations. And all of those affected areas and house, residents of the house over there were given compensations. How? They used the national registration system, and then created ID card, like Visa card or MasterCard. And then they are allowed to withdraw some amount of fund. It's not so big, but it's significant for a poor household from the bank. When I was in Pakistan, what happened is in Japan, 2011 earthquake and tsunami. What impressed most at the time when I was in Pakistan is the people reactions. Even the remote area of Pakistan in the north areas where the conflicts are, Taliban was there before, and then they are also hard hit by flood. They made the candle services and prayers for Japan people. And then they have sent me those photos and then those presents from the rural area. So that was a very much impressing phenomena over there, over the world. How social media, how technology has helped information sharing on the world and moving the people to act. The 10 things to learn from Japan, it has also been circulated at the time quite often. I'm not going to through. The thing is how you respond to such disaster, such shocking things, and when your family are lost, lives are lost, and also property is lost. I think there is order, there is a calmness, there has been a very educated response in that time, not disturbance, not panic. So how you can prepare your society in that form? There is a surprising factor beyond almost imagination at the time, even the well-prepared Japan, which was nuclear power failure and radiations. And we've been discussing about this quite a lot. The radiation information in Japan is now all over. I have also been discussing with my son when my son wanted to volunteer in the area affected by also tsunami earthquake, and how can we go there? Can he go there? Because relatives are very much worried. So we have calculated what the the level of radiations, and then looking at the map together from Pakistan and then Japan through social media and through IT technology. Okay, that's the kind of experience we had. I don't have much time, so I go into the concluding part, what we do here. Intensify natural hazard because of climate change need not necessarily translate to disaster. There is such a thing as anticipatory adaptation to climate change. I think Lucille will explain that more later. And the more conventional notion of disaster risk reductions. These concepts and principles underpin our work on climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction and management in United Nations as a whole. Noting that mitigation response to the growing uncertainty of meteorological hazard due to climate change cannot be intuitive and should be systematic and scientific. We facilitate the dialogue among the risk agencies, PAGASA, Philbox, MGB, Mine and Geology Bureau, and NAMRIA. It's called National Mapping and Resource Information Authority, which started the multi-agency, multi-donor collaboration to produce a scientific information and data, including multi-hazard maps for risk assessment, the result of which provide an objective basis for risk management, which have found their way into national and local processes like land use and development planning and regulatory system. With this, we'd like to urge everyone to participate in this paradigm shifting from simply reacting when disasters strike to avoiding disasters or lessening their consequences by making the appropriate interventions now. As they say, understanding the problem is half the solution. Unfortunately, something cannot be done through shortcut processes. Dealing with the dangers of natural hazards and the additionality of climate change is one of them. Throughout the course of this one-day summit, you will learn better the challenges related to climate change and disasters and some technological solutions to these problems, as well as some public and private initiatives related to disaster preparedness and response. There is a good reason to believe that little compelling is needed these days to underscore the urgent need for DRM and climate change adaptation effort. The response necessitates our collective actions and shared responsibility. In the face of natural disasters, collaboration should know no boundaries. And the more institutions and citizens share their expertise and resources to advance disaster preparedness and mitigation effort, then the better positions we are to deal with possible catastrophes. I just made my own kind of statement here. I was just going through last night and then I thought what's all about. While a change for the better takes time, a change for the worse can take place a matter of a second or a day. Some threats are predictable and well known, but there are threats that are unpredictable and not well known yet. Some threats are preventable while others are not, but their impact can be mitigated. Since science and technologies are powerful tools to mitigate, prepare, respond, and recover from adversities. However, end of the story, it is our wisdom, our will, and our act that determine a kind of world we will be as compared to the world we want. Hashtag 2030 now. I would like to thank our partners, especially Rappler, led by Maria Ressa, and Google for making this summit possible. We hope this partnership hold until we are able to achieve sustainable development in the country with everyone here, with everyone who is listening, and of course receive climate change commissions, Office of Civil Defense or National Council for Disaster Risk Management, private sectors, or particularly netizens. And I hope that, again, this partnership will continue and create a world which is safer and better and sustainable and resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Toshi. Thank you for speaking. While we're setting up, first of all, let me say welcome to the guys in Davao who are watching the live stream together there, as well as the people in New York City who are watching it in New York, in NYC Alley. Most especially, thank you to the many faces I see here again. Some of you I've only met online, and it's great to see you back. Last year, we were here in the same room, and we talked about the power of social media, and we talked about what we can do. It's 1 year later, and we have some things to report to you that's actually the power that you've put together and what we've been able to accomplish with it. 1 year from now, we have what one author called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, that together, top-down government, along with bottom-up civic engagement, us, can actually deal with the problem that has been, well, it's unsolvable. It's a wicked problem, right? Hashtag 2030 now. Since 2009, since Ondoy, when I hear rain, it's different. We know it in Manila. We feel it. So what can we do about it? Those are some of the things that I want to talk to you about today, and I'll take you through the technology, and I'll take you through, I'm taller now. I'll take you through what we can do together. I'll start. Some of you guys have heard me talk about this before. How do we put together ourselves, you, the hero? How do you put that together with social media, with crowdsourcing, with big data? That's kind of how I want to start and show it to you. The difference between information and big data, which is actually what we want to try to harness to help in disaster risk reduction, to help in climate change adaptation, is the difference between a photo. And I'll start with where my own journey began. This is a photo in June of 2008 in a crisis room, and knock on wood, Zamboanga will end this weekend. But this, again, was dealing with the Abu Sayyaf. We had three of our journalists, Ces Drilon, Jimmy Encarnacion, and Angelo Valderrama, were kidnapped by the Abu Sayyaf. I had the unfortunate experience of having to run the crisis team. And we did something that was different. This is a picture of the crisis room where we took, again, a collaborative effort. Members of the police, the chief negotiator from the police, he's sitting there. That's him here. Oh, you can't see it. This guy here. The brother of Ces, who's actually here, you're listening to a phone where we're negotiating with her. You know, Glenda Gloria, she wrote the book on the military, and most recently in 2011, Military Corruption. She is our managing editor, but she was also part of our crisis committee. What we did is we bypassed the hierarchy. And when we bypassed that hierarchy, we were able to get them out in 10 days. The reason I show you this is because when it's like this, it's a picture, it's a photo. But if you put 26 frames per second, there's a new name for it. It's called video, film. That's the difference between information and big data. It actually changes everything. this was an obsessive moment, and this moment, actually, in that whole old Chinese statement, out of crisis comes opportunity. All of the things that we learned here is actually what led us to Rappler and to the book I wrote in 2011. This is about social networks. And the reason I'm just telling you about social networks is it took me a year to kind of go through the kidnappers who were there and map. This is a map that was done by Core Lab at the Naval Postgraduate School in the United States that basically traces terrorism from the spread of terrorism from Afghanistan. You have here Syed Khattab. He's the guy who actually, I can't reach it, but way up on top, you'll see him. He's the ideological inspiration for Osama bin Laden, who you'll see here, somewhere in the middle there. Actually, let me show it to you. I can reach that. Osama bin Laden here. Then let's bring him to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He's the 9/11 mastermind. After Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we're going to come back down through Hambali. He's the Indonesian, the guy who planned, who carried out the Bali bombings in October of 2002. Then we come to the two Indonesians, Dul Matin and Umar Patek, who fled Indonesia after Bali, came to the southern Philippines, lived here for 7 years. And then we come down to here. Salih Said, the guy who actually physically picked up, dragged Sess, Jimmy, and Angel from their Jeep to the forest. That's the flow. When you can map things, and this is part of the reason, you'll see throughout the day how you are connected to everyone else in this room, because as you're tweeting, we're pulling down, and Russell will create a map that will show you how we're all connected. When you see how we're connected, you can do lots of things with that. We can chart social networks, we can harness the power of social networks. Here it's spreading something bad. This is the problem. It can spread good, it can spread evil, but we can map the spread of emotions and behavior. I want to talk to you about how information becomes big data. And we came from a physical social network. What is social media? It's just your physical social network on steroids, right? You just take your family and friends and then you get rid of boundaries of time and space, and that's social media. So what kind of information are we getting? Look at how much you're getting. More than 10 million photos uploaded every hour. The 5 hours that we'll be here before lunch, 10 million times 5. Click and I know if you're in this room, you're Filipino, there's 94 to 96% of us are on Facebook. Click a like button or leave a comment nearly 3 billion times a day. How do you make sense of that information? On YouTube, which is where we're live streaming, you have to catch the live stream on YouTube. 800 monthly users upload over an hour of video every second. How much video has been uploaded while I'm sitting here speaking to you or standing? And then, of course, let's go to Twitter, where you're at. The number of tweets grows around 200% every year. And the last number that I could find was 2012, more than 400 million tweets a day. How do you make sense of this? Because every single granular detail tells its own story. That is how much information. That's big data, right? So I'm not the first to say this. There's a great book I'd recommend, Big Data, by Victor Meyer-Schonberger and Kenneth Coquier, where they said that the amount of information changes everything. The change of scale is a change of state. We still call it information, but it went from picture to video, and we didn't even realize it. This is the power we can tap. We change the essence by changing the amount. Big data is a major, massive transformation, and we can use it as a tool to solve some of the world's worst problems, some of the upcoming problems that we have to deal with 2030 now, right? And these are just 3 ideas, 3 major shifts in the way we have to think. We're still used to thinking like it's statistical sampling, right? But in this new world, we have the ability to analyze vast amounts, and that's being churned now as we speak. N equals all instead of random sampling. So forget trying to get that perfect sample. You don't need it. You gather everything, and when you gather everything, the second part will happen. You're going to get a lot of garbage in it. As scale increases, so do inaccuracies. But what we lose in accuracy, we actually gain insight at the macro level. So at the micro level, you can lose some accuracy, but when you pull it up to what I call, well, I'm not the only one to call this, to God's eye view, you see a picture you would never have been able to see. And that's the third big point here, is that automatically when you look at big data, you see what, and then you'll have to dig to find out why. Most of the time when we're doing random sampling, you have to already ask a question. In this one, when you use big data, you can actually see everything without even asking a question. So it's much more open, it's freer of bias, except for, I was saying the geeks will rule the world. The geeks are there, Google geeks and Rappler geeks. Be careful of those guys. I'm gonna use a case study of Rappler. As you guys know, we're a little over a year and 8 months, a year and a half. We'll be 2 years by January. So this is what we are. What is Rappler? We made up the name. And for journalists, that's really tough. That's the mind shift we went through. Rap, back to the 80s days, to talk, plus ripple, to make waves. That's what we wanted. Our core is still the same, professional journalism, but adapting new technology. That new technology gives us the wisdom of the crowds. Another great book by James Surowiecki called The Wisdom of the Crowds. If you haven't read it, I'd recommend it because it'll give you an idea to how we work together. When you put the crowd together, regardless of what genius goes up against the crowd will always be more accurate. And that's the foundation of Project Agos. That's the foundation of the initiatives we'll show you today. This is where Rappler stands. And when you put it there, this is how we put it together. Content creation, which is not just the professional journalist, but you. And there have been some wonderful, 20% of the content of Rappler comes from you. And you are saying things and doing things that we could never have imagined. You know, real life is actually stranger than fiction. And we're getting that from you, right? It's like embedding in every community. Content creation amplified by social media, which is each of our social networks on steroids, asking for crowdsourcing, which is what? All of us taking one small step to actually come together, that's here, and that crowdsourcing leading to big data. I'll quickly show you what's the impact of this. Well, I'll tell you, just for Rappler alone. In less than 2 years, we're the third top online news site. That's incredible. I wouldn't have been able to imagine it a year ago. But this is Alexa rankings, which is publicly available. You can go online. Philippines in the top 50 sites. Number 1 is the top ranking site, which in the Philippines is either Google or Facebook. I'm not quite sure. I think it's Facebook, right? But you can look at it and look at how things change. Rappler has less than 100 people. We're working against groups that have 1,000. You know, again, look at the power of a few that leads to the power of the many. This is the idea, not just for today, but for hashtag 2030 now. Nothing great can be done alone. You need to actually work together. We need to collaborate together, that every single little push, even if you're 10 years old, will make a difference. And that's the point. So this technology allows you to see the human superorganism, right? When we're talking about big data, some of you guys have seen this. I love this map. I show it to you all the time because they're not Rorschach tests. This is a snapshot of human societies at particular moments in time. A is hashtag Japan. The tsunami, this is March 2011, tsunami, the Fukushima reactor accident. That's the way people behave during times of crisis. We form hubs, are looking for information. Most of the time that's government or that's news groups. Second, hashtag GOP, that's the American human superorganism, 6 months before the US presidential elections. Is there nothing that shows you clearer how divided Americans were between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama? Right? Parang kitang-kita eh. And that's tens of thousands of millions of tweets of Americans. So that's not hypothesis. That's not me thinking it out. This is what a revolution looks like. Hashtag Egypt, at the time when a 30-year dictatorship was killed. Not killed, let's just say ended, right? And then next to it, hashtag Syria, ongoing, this is 18 months of an ongoing rebellion against Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. What's interesting when you look at both of these is that their hubs are much smaller than hashtag Egypt. And that kind of makes sense because, why? They're fighting their own government, right? So the question that you ask here is, if Syria looks like this, if Syria begins to look like hashtag Egypt, does that mean a revolution has happened? Does that mean the government has been ousted? Of course, I got to bring you to the Philippines. And of course, it's more colorful because it's more fun in the Philippines. Diba? So, if you don't know it, this is day 44, the Corona impeachment trial. This is decision day, judgment day. This is when the Philippine Senate, acting as judges, ousted a Chief Justice of the Philippine Supreme Court. If you can go on Rappler, you can go into the site and zoom in. You can type in your Twitter account to see your social networks. And what you can see is you can actually take apart what spreads through these links. Who's pro-corona? Who's anti-corona? You can see these things when you see the map. This is the first day of the campaigns. And again, very interesting, right? It looks like a mess, but it's not. Just remember the way it looks, right? When you zoom in, you'll notice that all of our political parties are part of the same social network. All. Team Pinoy and Una sa Senado, both of them, Liberal Party, they're part of the same social networks. In fact, if you go back, the only politicians not part of this magenta social network are the left groups. Gabriela Philippines, it's down here to the left, right, to my left. You can see here, Teddy Casino is down here, Gabriela Philippines. Again, you see the pattern, right? So you can see that there's no better visualization of how the Philippines doesn't have any real political party system. You've heard analysts say it, now you can see it visualized. A year ago today, well, not today, but a year ago, Social Good Summit was here. We had our Secretary of Tourism, It's More Fun in the Philippines talk. You had Bianca Gonzalez, who is celebrity with substance. She had 1.7 million followers on Twitter. And then Chris Lau, you guys remember the man who wasn't informed. But remember, this was the very first time he spoke publicly. And he spoke about how he almost committed suicide because of the way he was treated by us online. Right? So again, it was a chilling factor for us to realize the power we had. Last year at the Social Good Summit, we hit 91.6 million tweets and retweets. This year, where will we go? The virtual world has expanded. The number of Filipinos on Twitter has expanded. Facebook calls us, actually this is ComScore, which is a US-based group, calls the Philippines the Facebook capital of the world, the social media capital of the world. What are we going to look like this year? 91 million, 91.6. That shows you the reach of social media. You can map it. And the reason I like doing this is because you can actually see, this is the Philippine footprint here. Bianca and Tim Yap were the celebrity networks. They're in yellow. This is us, the journalists, the citizens. When you put it together, look at how big our footprint is compared to, hi, New York. This is Mashable here, right? And this is the American footprint. Little Philippines punches above its weight. What happened August 26? A Facebook post in 7 days brought out about 100, the police estimate 80,000 to 100,000 people in Luneta Park. Collective outrage turned into action. And this is what's funny. If you were out there, people said there was great feeling of solidarity, but it was also kind of boring because there was no program. There was no leader. People didn't know where to go, right? And you know what? This, created by the internet, peer-to-peer networks, this is what we looked like online. Do you see how messy it is? How on the verge of chaos it is? The challenge to us is how do we get all these distinct groups to actually self-organize? And what does that mean? That means we need to find some kind of way where we can still be ourselves but be able to work together. The challenge for hashtag 2030 Now. I want to break apart all of those tweets for you. This is what it looks like. It took nearly 7 days to hit 10,000 mentions on Twitter, but on the 7th day, that's August 25, you had here another 10,000 in the second bump. Here, I'll come to you. Here, and then look, like a medical contagion, it's hit 30,000. Do you know what time? 7 a.m. on August 26. August 26. So like a tipping point. And then at 7 a.m., people were really active on social media and they went out on the streets at 10 a.m. Can you predict what will happen based on our behavior in social media? These are just some of the lists of things that are being done with the crowd around the world. And I will leave you with this slide. I won't go through all of them. We're not the first, but we can certainly be among the most powerful and perhaps the most directed if we can organize ourselves, move away from that chaos, and come together, truly collaborate. I'll move to crowdsourcing and what we do in Rappler. This is personal experience. We decided we will crowdsource your mood for every story. Why? The neuroscientists say that up to 80% of how we make decisions in our lives is not based on what we think. So I will not appeal to what you think. I will appeal to your emotions. As a journalist, medyo masakit yun para sa amin eh. Kasi, di ba, sabi sa amin, huwag kayong maging emotional. Eh, yung pala emotional kasi kayo eh. So, kailangan maging emotional kami. The emotions were chosen with a group of psychologists and sociologists, some of them who do the surveys. We consulted with them. But this mood meter is on every story. And then we let technology do its job. All of the votes on the mood meters are aggregated in the mood navigator at the middle of the front page. This is a snapshot, again, a moment in time. The mood navigator on the last day of May, Saturday. There was an explosion at Surrendra on Friday night. And you can see this. This is a posh condominium in Fort Bonifacio. The walls basically came out, exploded, and hit this poor truck. Absolutely wrong moment of time driving through that street and killed 3 people. Here, this is the story that's gotten the most number of votes on the mood meter. And this is the story of killing, of the explosion. At 8 p.m., a few minutes after, we posted the story, and it's yellow, afraid. But 9 p.m., an hour later, was the Rappler newscast, which was live. And by that point, we knew it wasn't a terrorist attack. And instead of being yellow, being afraid, it turned sad. Overall, that Saturday morning at 11 a.m., people were sad. You created the mood of the day. Each of your votes led to this. How does it become big data? Let's look at the month of May. And we look at the month of May because it's elections for the Philippines, right? This is the days at the bottom on the x-axis. We know that May 13th is election day. So this is election day. And again, green is happy, red is angry, purple is annoyed. And those are the ones that are just interesting. Filipinos were happy in the run-up to the election, to election day. But if you look here on May 13th, what happened? We became angry and annoyed. Why? We kind of know why, because election results came in slowly, right? When they came in slowly, we got annoyed, and then we became happy again, particularly on the 23rd, the day when the winners were announced. Look when you pull all that data together, you can see that 77% of people were happy in the month of May. 77% of the votes. The one thing I like is at the end of the month, something happened that really made Filipinos angry. And it had nothing to do with politics. It had something to do with a very visceral reaction Filipinos seem to have. Do you guys remember what happened at the end of May? An event that really pissed you off. I will say it's about a comedian making a statement. Vice Ganda cracking a joke about Jessica Soho, a broadcaster, and look how angry we were. Right? So it was a little bit of a hit on a credible figure about weight and about sex and rape. Made Filipinos angry. Big data. So this is big data. There's no bigger data than elections. And the reason I go to this is the very first time that in elections you can see not just the results, but the granular data. That is what technology can do. When you mouse over these 12 senators, one, they change places automatically, which I love, right? And then if you mouse over them, it'll give you where every single vote came from. Journalists will no longer be accused of trending. We have no vested interest. Here's the information. It's all there. Bahala ka na. Diba? And ang ganda tignan pag God's eye view nung data. When you look at the data, this is what it looks like in God's eye view. This is the PH++ machines. For the non-Filipinos, you had nearly 54 million Filipinos voting for nearly 18,000 officials, 12 senators, national post. This is the PH+ machine up top. Going down here is the per hour. And so that's how each PH+ machine transmitted, and you can see the big gap in the middle. Why was there a big gap? That's the immediate question we asked. And it was because CF cards weren't working. Because it looks very suspicious when in the middle you have at 3 a.m. the transmissions happening. Patterns. That's what you see with big data. Here's something we're trying to do now that's crowdsourcing. #BudgetWatch. It's the beginning of an anti-corruption campaign. If we're really serious about doing something about the pork barrel scam, you gotta follow the money. That's the way you catch terrorists. It's the way you catch corrupt people, corrupt lawmakers, corrupt anyone, not just, diba, Janet Napoles is in prison. I would better shut up now. So you can, again, do not be bored by numbers. Do not be bored by facts. Pull it out to God's eye view. I will leave you with this, with something the international community calls Typhoon Bofa. We in the Philippines know it as Pablo. And something that one guy who will speak to you later today, his name is Patrick Meyer, did along with OCHA. And this is the United Nations Office for, OCHA. You basically, what they did is they took all of our tweets. Again, imagine all your tweets make a difference, right? Patrick Meyer took the tweets and then he used volunteers. While we were asleep in the Philippines, they worked on it, they classified it, they geotagged it, and they then sorted it, and they mapped it. Patrick Meyer, the guy who did this, will be speaking to you later on. He's the guy who did Ushahidi, and he moved on from Ushahidi to do other things. Basically, machine learning, teaching a machine. How we can teach the machine. We are cyborgs. No, it's not about cyborgs. It's really about how this technology is. This is what we'll tell you about later on and how we all plug in. You can sit in your room and still be a hero if you plug into Project Agos. I'll leave you with this. This is the way we see the world today, where this is the Rappler debate. We had 6 candidates who were brave enough to come debate each other face to face, and while they were talking, there's a mood meter behind each of them where you're voting. There's nothing more transparent than that. It's real-time results, right? And what you can see is, this is the stage. They were looking out at Quezon Memorial Circle. There were about 1,000 people there, but you can see what they were looking at behind them. This is the world today. The digital exhaust will determine our future. Let me say that again. Our digital exhaust will determine our future. What you put online, the trail online you put in the digital world, will help determine your future. That is big data. We mapped it. We took a look at the way their supporters worked, and by both mapping it, and the guy who's doing this, who's doing the map for our chief data scientist for Rappler is Russell Shepard, and he's going to stand up. He looks like an absent-minded professor. No, Russell, please give him a very warm Manila welcome. He just moved to the Philippines a month ago. What we found out here is this. Remember, when we all come together for disaster risk reduction, you will hear from the people who have spent their lives working on this. Lucille Sering has her personal experience. Lauren Lagarda, you know she's been talking about this from forever. And she'll tell you more now. You have other people who will talk to you this afternoon. It is their lives for them. It's good for us to listen to them because I don't know enough about it, but I know my life and the next generation. Guys, if we don't do something, the Philippines will be buried in water. People will die. And we can do something now with this technology. I'll leave you with these thoughts on big data. It is about predictions. Our behavior in the future is determined by our digital exhaust. So here are some of the dangers, because I'm not a good journalist if I don't tell you the dangers ahead. We'll shift from privacy to probability, right? It's no longer whether or not you will or you won't. The data will know you will or you won't. The question is, how do you protect your rights to privacy? This is happening now. Algorithms are predicting the likelihood of things like health issues, like, will you get a heart attack? This is happening mostly in the Western world. We're not there yet in the Philippines. But if the algorithms say you're likely to get a heart attack, your health insurance premiums will go up. These are the companies who are using it, right? Or look at those finance companies, the banks who try to decide based on algorithms whether you will default on a mortgage. So they deny your loan, right? And then here's the one. You guys remember Minority Report? It's happening today. It's no longer science fiction. And they can pinpoint this. Okay, everybody knows the NSA and PRISM and Edward Snowden, right? There's a reason why that's happening, because they can pinpoint who is more prone, who's behaving in a way that will make them carry out a terrorist attack. Well, so what happens if the algorithms say you're going to commit a crime, but you haven't committed the crime yet? Remember that in the movie? The police barge in and he's in bed with his wife and they say, you're going to kill your wife. Where's free will? How strong is the data? I just leave you with this because the big question now is, can you trump what the big data says about you? Okay, I'll leave you with this. This is going to be a whole day, a whole day where we will imagine #2030now. We will help kick off a global dialogue, and we will show what the Filipino is capable of doing. This is hopefully a day to plan, and hopefully by next year, we will all come together again and say, we helped prevent the loss of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoshi and Maria Ressa. Let me just say, guys, if you guys agree with me, Maria is just one badass lady, isn't she?
Oh, she's very
She
scary.
is. And also, I just want to let you guys know that #2030now is trending in the Philippines, just below Daniel Padilla Magic and period stories. So why don't we go ahead and keep tweeting that so we can move above Daniel Padilla stories.
Yeah.
And happy Chen Chen Day.
Consider that a challenge. And for everyone who's standing back there, who's tired, the SGV case room is now open for everyone standing. You can sit down and watch from there. We have the live feed there. So if you are a bit tired, you want to take a little bit of a break, you can still watch the Social Good Summit from there. So SGV case room right in this building.
All right, so right now we're going to have a question and answer portion. And I think what we're going to do is you guys in the audience will raise your hands and approach the mic.
So we'd like to call. Oh, you're there. Great. See, my boss is really smart. She's there. Okay, question starting now.
That's why she's your boss.
Yeah, she's very scary. Game. Right there, the gentleman over there, the mic is right behind you.
Please introduce yourself as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Mr. Magno from Valenzuela City. My question to Ma'am Risa. Indeed, Rappler is 100% powerful online. My question is, what about offline? When disaster strikes, users who utilize signal-dependent internet provider will become powerless.
It's a fantastic question, sir. And I'll give you two answers to it. Number one is, Rappler's reach is dependent on internet penetration rate. And our internet penetration rate is roughly 35%. 35% of 100 million people is roughly 35 million people. We are in transition. We're banking on the fact that the telcos, both Smart and Globe, who are both here and who you will hear from, because telecommunications is the first step for dealing with any disaster or any problem effectively, right? You pointed this out. As well as others like Google, who is working on getting 1 billion people connected online, right? So 35 million right now. That demographic in the Philippines mirrors real life, A, B, C, D, E. For those, for in the international audience, AB is 1%. 1% of our population is A, B, C1 is 14% going down. Our mass base is D and E. What does that mean in terms of reach? Egypt had less than 30% internet penetration rate. And what happened in Egypt was those 30% actually helped trigger not just ousting their own dictator, but also triggering the Arab Spring. Do not downplay the power you already have. But with 35 million Filipinos, we cannot yet elect a president. DOST, Secretary Mario Montejo says that by 2015, he expects 99% internet penetration rate in the Philippines. Yeah, I know, I said the same thing. But you know what? He put it on the record, so we will hold him accountable. And you know how he said he was going to do it? He said TV white space, something Google is also playing with. And Microsoft, I sat at a panel with Microsoft, and they said they've already been doing test runs. Everyone working on this project says it's not far-fetched and that it's doable. When we get 100% internet penetration rate in this country, we will be a force to reckon with. We will be able to elect the president. So Barack Obama has already moved ahead and done this in the United States. Our future in that way, we can kind of see the trends. So the short-term answer is, how can we use this? It's already being used. The cybercrime law was stopped by people on the internet. BlogWatch, very, very strong. There's a charter for internet freedom that was created by citizens. Look at #MillionPeopleMarch. With only 35 million, this is the power we have. What happens when we get 100 million online?
Next question.
Thank you, sir. Anyone from this side?
I'll go down there and get them.
Just adding, I think by 2030, we're talking about 2030 now. And then by 2030, the projection is almost everyone in Philippines or most of the country will have access to those informations. Therefore, we are really working together to make sure we reach extra mile. Who are those who are in need of support but not yet having access? So that's the way we see our partnerships going through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Edwin Caedong Soriano from Rescue PH. In the past typhoon, there was a tweet and it said, Is this Rescue PH or is it Rescue Manila, MNL? This concerned us because we felt as if social media is gravitating towards Manila. Of course, so many internet netizens in Manila, of course. And in the meantime, there's 65,000 evacuees in Zamboanga, and I don't feel it in the social media space. How do you think we can influence that so that our concerns are not just Manila-centric, but the country? Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Again, great question. You will hear from Rescue PH in the volunteer panel later on, but to answer the question, the internet gravitates towards urban areas at this point in time. But strangely, one of the most connected cities is not Manila. There are patches in Manila where we know, be nice to our telco providers, but we all complain, right? The better it would be, the better for all of us, but the better for them as well. But one of the most connected cities is CDO. You know, if you look at which cities are there, but part of our problem, and this is what Move PH is trying to do, before Rappler even went online, Move PH was going to schools to actually teach social media. DepEd is our partner now, and we need to teach Filipinos the power of social media, that you can use it not just to stay in touch with your family and friends, but you can actually use it for bigger things, to actually help in crisis, or to actually spread joy rather than anger, which is what we tend to do most of the time, right? So how can we do it? One, just like disaster, CCA, the Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Risk Reduction, education. Part of it is, it's not that they don't have the devices. 70% of Filipinos still access the internet through internet cafes. So they're not on all the time, but they're there. And now Smart and Globe have free services where they access social media online for free, right? So that's also the way Filipinos, we have 10 to 12 million Filipinos working globally, are overseas Filipino workers. How will this change? Like in Climate CCADRR, education. Two, we need to, like Tupperware parties, band together in each of our cities, and then come together in God's eye view, which is the basic foundation of what we want to try to do with you today. This technology is so brand new. You know, it's so brand new. Remember, don't forget, Facebook was invented in a college dorm room in 2004. YouTube came out in 2006. Google bought it when? You know, I mean, it's so new. We're all trying to figure it out. And I think that the baby steps we're taking at some point hits a tipping point. And I know it will happen, if not this year, next year.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Try again.
There you go.
Good morning. I'm Henry Estipona. My observation is addressed to Ma'am Riza. This color coding trending is sometimes good only in the US. Is it because they have a straightforward and opinionated citizen? But in the Philippines, I don't think it is applicable because sometimes when the people say no, sometimes they means yes. Sometimes when they say yes, they means no. Now, if we were able to categorically correct with this, I think we can even predict our aspiration and vision for the Philippines. Thank you.
Great question. Are there cultural differences, right? Yes, there are cultural differences, but again, you can see, let me warn you of the dangers. We all know, if you're in this room, you've been on social media long enough, you know the dangers. There's a lot of trash there, there are dangers. But I am such an optimist with this technology. Why? Because it is fully transparent. If somebody bullies someone, we all know Chris Lau. You may not have met him, but Chris Lau wasn't informed, diba? And he gave us a story. So the first is, I think social media will change our culture. I think it will connect us with a global community, with global values. Hopefully, we will still always say no, yes, when we mean no, because our culture is that way. We don't like disappointing. But maybe if we want to compete in a global economy, we begin to be more efficient and we begin to talk. Because if we're not just talking amongst ourselves, we move beyond our parochial interests to a global community. I'm a fan of greater transparency. As a journalist, transparency is what we're after. We try to hold all of us accountable. And as you know, sometimes we say, power, you are wrong, like we did the other day, last week. But I won't go there. I think where we need to go with this now is you have to get on the bus. It's moving. Okay, let's say it's a plane because it's technology, or a spaceship. It's so fast. I said this at the Senate during the FOI hearing. 15 days is a generation online. A lot can be done online. And in the last 2 years, I can see the netizens. I can see all of us online scrambling, trying to do something, volunteering, not sleeping, trying to help. But how can we help? How can we connect with the agencies, government, whose job it is to do that? Maybe instead of just yelling at them to do their jobs better, we can actually help. Maybe we can harness everything we're doing. Rescue PH has tried to do that, but one of the things that we can do now is direct connection. Top-down governance, bottom-up civic engagement. I think it will change our culture. I hope it will change our culture for the better because too many things stay in elite power circles.
May I add something on this topic? I think there are, we call silent majorities many times, who are not having a voice, even saying yes or no. I think those people, how to reach those people to say yes or no is very important. And also in terms of culture, there is a yes-no culture to some, You can say yes-no culture, you want to know yes or no all the time. Are you happy or unhappy all the time? There are in between too. Sometimes you can't make decisions, sometimes you are confused, you need to know, have more information. Then the level of yes, for example, how deep is your love? There is a song, in fact. And then how deep you are committed. How deep are you in yes, saying yes and saying no, and how long it may last. I think those are the informations probably we can still, deepen through this network, and then how you analyze the people's emotions as well. I think that's very important, and I hope to spread, as Maria Ressa said, the joy and happiness to communicate to to more people who are currently not given access and silent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanaka and Ms. Maria Ressa. Thank you for your questions as well. I'm in such awe of Maria that it's like I can never say Maria. It's Maria Ressa all the time. Hi,
Good
Maria
for
Ressa.
you.
Hello, Maria Ressa. It's
Thank
nice to
you,
see
Maria
again.
Ressa.
Maria Ressa.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a fan.
I noticed. Yes. We'll be seeing a video in a bit. I don't do this normally. I'm a disaster reporter for Rappler. And we all know the story of disaster. The winds come, the typhoons come, the sky falls, and people die. It's the same story every time. The numbers may change, the statistics may be different, but the only thing really different is how lives do change. What we do in Rappler is we try to show you the stories behind the disaster. We try to put faces and names to the statistics. And we tell these stories again and again because most of the time we cannot forget, but some of the time we're afraid we will. So we tell this story in the hope that the ending will change, and we think the ending will for people who have the imagination to see it. This one is called After Pablo.
We'll take you down a road, down many roads, along banana fields and painted houses. One day a storm came, the storm to end all storms, the first storm for many. They say it was a black wind. They say the water raged. In the morning, the sun still rose, but it shone over a different country. The sky was still blue, the fields were still green, but the houses were broken, every roof gone, while the coconuts buried their dead. We can tell you their names, not many, not even most. Many of the dead are lost while the living still search. They are afraid of rain and wind and weather. Their children wake to nightmares. One day the world belonged to them. The next it ended. They are farmers, teachers, fishermen, and they know they might never be again. We ask you to imagine a morning like theirs, with the sun rising over a shattered world, where loved ones are numbers on a list, and the only dream left is the dream to live.
After Pablo was a collaborative documentary between myself and photojournalist John Havellana. Thank you. But what was great about that was that among other videos and among other movements in social media, it raised a lot of funding via Globe and Smart also that led to help sent to Compostela Valley and Davao Oriental. Let's introduce our next speaker. Secretary Lucille Sering is an environmental education advocate, and prior to her stint in government, she served as the Associate Dean of the San Sebastian College of Law. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
It's really so hard to speak because I'm only given 10 minutes and try to put it in all in 10 minutes what took humans decades and hundreds of years to actually create. But I'll try my best today. And of course, it's always difficult to speak after Maria Ressa. So I don't know why I was placed after her. I'll try. So I was asked to speak about global warming and climate change. I know this is a crowd where most of you already probably know what this issue is all about. But let's put it in a different perspective so that we'll probably more understand this a bit more. And the reason why I have the authority to speak before you today, there is a Climate Change Commission. It is a government agency. Our chair is the president himself. This was created in 2009 after Ondoy and Pepeng. And in that same year, they signed the law that created the commission. I was Undersecretary of Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and because they can't find anyone, because I was only one of the few at the DNR who was crazy enough to talk about climate change, they couldn't find anyone among government to appoint in the Climate Change Commission, so here I am. They also made me Executive Director of the Climate Change Secretariat to save on cost. So, Consuelo, they gave me a rank of Secretary, so they now call me Secretary Lucille Sering. So if my slides are ready, where is it? Oh, what is global warming? That is not caused by that blower. When I took this job, one of the reasons why I was so passionate at this topic is Maria Ressa mentioned about my experience. I don't call myself a victim, but more of a survivor. In 1984, in Surigao del Norte, I'm from Mindanao, by the way, we experienced the worst typhoon ever, at least in our part of the country, called Typhoon Nitang. Until now, it's considered as the costliest and most destructive typhoon, with over 1,000 people dead. And at that time as well, at an early age, I was wondering, why is this happening? Can this happen again? Can we stop this altogether? But now, I'm already like 5 years older, or 10 years older, 50 years older. I'm now here talking about this topic. But when I looked around, other than me, who's a lawyer, who's not even a scientist, what am I doing in a Climate Change Commission? I was looking around for someone who could speak, who's more popular than Al Gore. Definitely this person, I don't know if you call it a person, is more popular than Al Gore. So please give us a few minutes to listen to what he has to say about global warming.
I'm off to work at the Krusty Krab, frying up patties and blabbity blab. Huh? That's new. Strange place to park a car. What's this for?
SpongeBob, you're wasting me precious carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide?
I'm pumping it into the atmosphere, boy. Thanks to global warming, the temperature will soon go through the roof, and then we'll have an endless summer.
Why do you want an endless summer, Mr. Krabs?
So I can open my latest money-making venture, the Krusty Pool.
But what about winter sports, Mr. Krabs?
Forget winter, boy. We're talking suntanning, hanging tan, and swimming all year long.
The endless summer does sound fun.
And profitable.
Fun and profitable. Big business does it again. I just wish it could be the endless summer right now. Hey.
Oh, umbrellas are $3, sir. Oh, what a bargain. I'll give you 5. What the? Barnacles, it suddenly got very warm in here. Who turned up the heat? SpongeBob, what are you doing?
Just throwing another tire on the fire for global warming, Mr. Krabs. Hey, look! It's working! The entire town is heading this way to cool off.
You mean pay off? Hurry, SpongeBob! Fill the pool! Fill the pool!
Aye, sir.
Have your money ready, folks. The line starts here. Where's everybody going?
We're all moving north. We can't live here anymore. It's too hot.
Only customers have moved to cooler climates.
Look on the bright side, Mr. Krabs. There won't be a line to go in the pool.
So I hope you got that. You know, we've been talking about this issue since the early 90s, and we're still talking until now. And every year, the global community has grown in terms of numbers of negotiators, and the more numbers you have, the more difficult it is to have a consensus. That's why we couldn't get to agree on what to do yearly. So it's always incremental agreements. But if you look at the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, after SpongeBob, I think I got more of attention using SpongeBob than using this slide. This is actually the legal terminology or definition of what climate change is all about. It says that it is attributed directly or indirectly to human activities, and of course, in addition to natural climate variability. This is very technical. This is the definition where the Republicans and the Democrats don't agree. Because if you look at attributing it directly to human activities, you're now starting to pinpoint what are those. So when SpongeBob said fun and profitable, big business does it again, discussion of climate change really in a global community is not about losing lives. It's really about the economy. What sector of my industry will be hit if I, the US, China, or Brazil will commit to reduce a number in terms of reduction of greenhouse gas? Obviously, the Saudis, the Arabs, they're saying, well, if you're going to go green, you have to pay us for compensation. We're going to lose revenue on our oil. So ganyan po. That's how we've been discussing in the UNFCCC. That's why because we belong to different perspectives, you don't expect the Africans to go vegetarian. So this is where this definition, although signed, agreed upon by everybody, the agreements that went after that continues to be debated until now. So, if just in case you were absent when this was actually explained in school, what SpongeBob and the carbon dioxide just simply mean is that we are actually given natural warming, tropical weather, the best. But because of these greenhouse gases, because of this carbon dioxide, and because of Mr. Crab putting a lot of this in the air to earn more money, this effect has now actually didn't allow, most of the sun that are unable to go out of the atmosphere. This is global warming. This increase in temperature is causing climate to change. It is already unequivocal, and most mainstream scientists already agree that greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is trapping more heat. That's why we are seeing a lot of changes in our weather. The Philippines' change in mean temperature is about 0.57. Wow. But you see the global temperature is 0.8. The reason why we're 0.57, don't be happy yet, because we started observing our temperature in the 1950s. The global temperature, they started observing it in the 1800s, late 1800s. According to the IPCC in one scenario, A1B, which is worst case, and A2 is best case. It says that either way, with the way we're doing right now, our temperature will continue to increase, even under the best case scenario. So we are in deep blip, 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 blip. So, knowing 0.57, 0.8 degrees, what does it mean? How is it translated? For someone like us, a lawyer like me, the reason why I took up law, because I'm bad with numbers, how do you really translate that into something more understandable? This is the reason that Al Gore became popular. He didn't do this, but he was an advocate and a champion. He won the Nobel Peace Prize by simply going around, not showing off SpongeBob, but a frog. I don't know if you've seen The Inconvenient Truth. So here, according to the scientists, the IPCC said that if we are going to reach 1 degree, we will now see an impact cross-sectorally. Our food, our water, our ecosystems, an extreme weather event. And that if we hit 2 degrees, this is actually a point of no return. So if you read in Rappler the discussion of trying to reduce degrees by 1 degree, 1.5, that's what it means. We don't want to reach 2 degrees if it's still possible. So going through this graph, I'm with stupid, and what do we do? There's actually 2 things that the global community has decided to do, 2 approaches to address climate change. One is adaptation. To simply put, there are some things we can no longer change, hence we need to manage the unavoidable. And what are those? Planning. And then other one is mitigation, which simply means reduction of greenhouse gas, reducing your carbon footprint, going towards green economy, sustainable development. It really just means this. And those are the things that we do. We plan proactively. Unlike in the Philippines, we plan based on yesterday. So that's why we see every year the continuous increase in damages, in rehabilitation and recovery, because we have not yet planned based on our risk. And of course, and mitigation, planting trees, it's not the only way. There are other ways, collecting the trash, doing recycling, and then pagdating ng basurero, ipaghahalo-halo rin pala. So, there's nothing I can do about it right now. But I'm complaining out loud. Of course, we would like to do this, but you don't want to go to the office all sweaty, right? But it's up there as one of our strategy and technology. We don't mean that we have to go under the dark to do all these things. We're looking for alternatives to do this. In fact, for me, climate change is about opportunity. Right now, though, most of the technology that are made available are still imported. But we wanted to show that climate change can provide more jobs by doing the green manufacturing. We have natural resources, we have the skills, we can do it here. And we just need to harness that. That's why we're working with all agencies of government to take this opportunity into action. But if we are to compare actually to the rest of the world, where the Philippines is in terms of emission, boom, 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 of course, compared to China and the US, we're nowhere near the number. But here you can see China is actually the blue one. And this is not the big data that Maria Reza is talking about. This is a greenhouse gas inventory only on carbon dioxide. And the US is actually lower, because this was taken during the time when the US suffered their economic crisis. This shows you that the higher the growth in the economy, the higher the emission. And we've seen that also in our own inventory. In fact, we have 2 inventories already. On our second inventory, energy remains to be one of the highest emitter, but waste has increased almost 63% from our first inventory to the second, showing that our consuming public that is driving our economic growth is also emitting a lot of emission because of waste. So that's why I hate this basurero if you don't take this to heart about we're trying to do our recycling and they don't do it properly. But in the Philippines, if you look at their inventory, our energy agriculture is next to our energy, because now we're seeing actually a lot of coal power plants rising. Previous to that, the Philippines, we take pride that 50% of our energy mix is renewable. Hydropower, we are the second highest in the world next to the United States, one of the highest potential in solar, the first wind energy ever built in Southeast Asia, and yet somehow we're moving down because we're still looking at cost, so that's why we're seeing a lot of coal-powered plants being built. So if you look at this, of course, the Philippines, the reason why we're vulnerable, because of our location. We're visited by 19 to 20 typhoons every year. Well, there's a bit of good news on climate change. A bit of good news. Mababawasan po na isang bagyo, maaari ang pagdating ng climate change, but mag-increase naman po ang intensity ng bagyo. So, what are we doing? What did we do in 2009? We created the law. Thanks to Senator Lauren Regardo, who championed this in the Senate. We have a first national climate change action plan. You know, when I took in the job, my budget was only 15 million pesos. On the next year, it was 30 million. Di nga ako makakasuhan ng plunder. But what do you do in a very small budget? You don't complain. I'm just glad that I guess because of the high credibility rating of the president, we're able to knock on doors like UNDP, Australian Aid, and other bilateral partners. And I took that opportunity to use what little budget that I have to leverage for more support. And this, because of this, I was able to do things actually faster because I don't go through the very long bidding process of government. So in just 1 year, I showed some results, and this is what I want to show you today. This is a National Climate Change Action Plan. By the way, NEDA is still our Economic Development Authority, but they plan based on sector. Sometimes the tendency is you favor agriculture sector and then you neglect the other sectors. So now we know that climate change is cross-sectoral. We took the opportunity and used it as thematic. We're looking at food security, wherein there should be a convergence of national agencies involved in water, like DPWH, DNR, and DA. So this is how your National Climate Change Action Plan is structured. So, because of Facebook, I learned about Farmville. I said, this is my vision. You don't expect to involve or engage local government and make it so boring. Most of them are not elected based on competence, on science, by the way. I don't mean it in a bad way, please. I know this is recorded. That's why we have to go down that level and help them. Because all of them are really excited what to do. But for me, growing up in a province, I don't want to live here in Manila. Traffic is just so bad, I want to go home. We have a beachfront down there, still clean. Surfing, by the way, this week, I'm announcing it, Siargao surfing, I'm from there. If the ocean is your backyard, surfing is your sport. We love typhoons. You know why? When the stronger the wind, the higher the waves. So this is what we said. I went down to national agency, saying, you know, this is my vision, an eco town, ecologically stable and economically resilient. What do we mean by this? The reason the Philippines is vulnerable is because of our urban cities, of rural and urban migration. We're visited by 19 typhoons. There's a strong rural-urban migration. You're putting more people at risk. And third, our infrastructure remains weak. The more cars you have, we have so many cars now, and our roads remain to be the same. Babawasan pa na mga makukulit na mga motorista. So what I said, okay, national agency, can we converge, at least in one town? And I presented this to the president. I said, sir, one of the problems, the reason that I've encountered is I cannot make plans and programs unless I'm assessing my vulnerability. All our plans in government don't have that assessment. And then he said, can you do it in a year? Yes, sir. Let me pick the area. Go ahead. So I pick an area where I'm from, Siargao, of course. I'm just happy that the governor happens to be a first cousin also. So I'm not trying to favor, but more because I need to show some results right away in 1 year. And I pleaded and I cried to my cousin to allow me to do this in a year. And so she did. She writes the mayor, cast them absent pag hindi dumadating sa workshop, take projects out from them if they don't attend the workshop. So that's what we did. We did vulnerability assessment. We tried to determine natural resources. And then after that, we identified programs of that town on what they need to do because we don't want another Boracay in Siargao. And this is what we discovered. Because of this convergence, this is where the National Greening Program of DNR comes in, identifying where they should be planting. The Department of Agriculture, where their irrigation should be placed. The food security aspect. And of course, the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries and Agriculture, Bureau of Fisheries will now help us on mangrove planting. Next would be enhancement of genetic resources. Do you know that we cannot use the ilang-ilang anymore? Because it's already patented by YSL. No, we are losing billions of dollars because we don't know that we have these resources. And other people are using it. Did you know that there's a blood of indigenous people that now patented for because they're resilient to high blood? It's already patented, it's now being, there's a case filed. But if you can't have this and have not access to this and you have high blood, you might as well just marry one indigenous people. It might work. And renewable energy from wind, solar, and hydro. After we finish in a year in a rural area, they discovered they have high electricity costs, difficult to compete with the mainland products because of transportation costs being too high. They learned after this assessment that they can actually provide their own electricity, and even more, and provide electricity to the mainland. Now the next step for us to do an investors forum, and we're just happy to say that one big company, EDC, have already set a wind monitoring system to determine really the potential of wind power in the area. In just 1 year we did this with 50 million budget. And of course, ecotourism, the plane arrives, oops, sorry. But anyway, the logic there is, we have a zip line, and there's a crocodile in the middle that brings in more adventure. Lolong is not the biggest crocodile caught. It came from Surigao. They brought it to Palawan, but we made sure it's called Suriganensis. And here we are. There's a diving guy, gone, probably eaten by a white shark. We don't know, but that's the whole idea. What is, okay, I'm sorry. This is the map that, I think you'd read it in Rappler if you go through Rappler. This is the actual map of, it's too anticlimactic. They're not supposed to show it right away. I was supposed to say something nice and then bring you the big boom. This is urban CDO. We wanted to have a rural strategy and an urban strategy to reduce urban migration. We have to provide jobs in the countryside because in the area like Siargao, the education system provides about, almost all of them, if not all, actually offers IT. They study IT with one computer every 80 students. And then criminology, where the crime of passion is the only recorded crime. Pagtapos na ang gera, nagkakalimutan na. So they're preparing their students to leave. And where do they go? In the urban area, looking for jobs, and if they don't have relatives, where do they go? Tabing ilog. So what we wanted to show here is that right after Sendong, being from Mindanao, I cannot go there and look at the pictures. I just can't. And I had to admit, I didn't even put relief packs. I said, this has to stop somehow. I went through this already, still very fresh. So I knocked on Toshi's door, UNDP, and USAID in just a few weeks gave us money. And we finished this in just 6 months. What government normally would do would finish in years. This is an actual map of CDO where we factor in climate future scenarios on rainfall. We wanted to plan based on a risk. We showed this to a mayor, I will not mention who. Oh, maybe you know already, right? They said, oh, can you not show it yet? I have an investors forum this year. Said, sir, maybe you should look at this carefully. I showed this to the congressman. I showed it to Secretary Singson. I've been going around with this map, scaring the bureaucracy and said, this will give us an idea on where we should spend our money. Unlike before, wherever you put there and then it goes to Napoles, I could probably get money from Napoles, I probably get more budget from Napoles. But nonetheless, it is not a negative or it doesn't discourage me even if my budget is very slow or very low because there are people like Rappler, UNDP, USAID are willing to help. But at one point, there will be a drain and even a donor's fatigue. So we wanted to scale this up because it shows us for the first time, this is the first map that I've ever created on this, that factors in 2020 year 2050 rainfall scenario. We'll do this also in Iligan, Tugigaraw, and Iloilo after Typhoon Frank in 2008. Ngayon lang sila magkakaroon nan. And Pablo, they're interested more in wind velocity because their question, kailangan pa ba namin magtanim ng banana kung ganun ulit kalakas ang hangin? So, I just wanted to leave you with this slide because this afternoon you will see me again. I hope I won't be overexposed. And then we will discuss the project that Maria Ressa wanted to make, and then I will be presenting it together with Voltaire. I hope I didn't scare you, but I just wanted to let you know that there's really hope for our country. Magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary Lucille and the Siargao Department of Tourism. We will give you guys a chance to talk to her a little bit, ask her some questions. But first, we'd like to bring up here on stage a lady who has devoted her work to ensuring that future generations of Filipinos will live in enabling environments where our natural resources are used in ways that are sustainable and equitable. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Lauren Legarda.
Good morning to all of you, and this Social Good Summit comes at a time when first there's Typhoon Odette threatening Metro Manila and has hit northern Luzon, and second, amidst so much negativity sometimes in our country, I'm glad that Rappler, Maria, and all of you have embarked on something that's positive and hopefully inspiring. And it's not so much us teaching you, but we learning from each other. So I was listening to Secretary Sering from the back earlier, and I understand that Maria had delivered her message as well. I hope that my message today somehow could impact on your lives, and these are the laws that we have crafted in the Senate. So I would like to acknowledge Maria Ressa, CEO of Rappler, and Secretary Sering, and all of those responsible for the Social Good Summit. And I hope that this can continue every year and perhaps more frequently so that this goodness can reverberate throughout the country. Much of this perhaps have been discussed by Lucille, but I will focus on the legislation we have done and perhaps some statistics to prove that the issue of climate change should no longer be questioned, whether it exists or not. We know that climate change has become the greatest humanitarian and development challenge of our time. In fact, I even say that it should be considered as a national security issue. A 4 degrees Celsius world may have seemed impossible if we talk about 20 or 30 years ago. There are many young ones here, and perhaps when you were born, you never expected that the issue of climate change would merit a whole day session, such as our summit today. The World Bank warns that we are in fact nearing a crisis that, if not responded to proactively, will continue to endanger the survival of our generation and the next generations. That's a quote. I can't tell you all the quotes so that I will not be charged with plagiarism, but in my speech, for which you have a copy, I want to make sure, because it's all footnoted, like in a privileged speech. I just want to make sure, okay? Then you, so later on, both hard or soft copy, my quotes are footnoted, okay? Just to be sure. Why are you laughing? I'm usually a very serious person. I have never made my audience laugh. And it wasn't meant to make you laugh, but I'm amused that you're laughing. In 2011, the Philippines was the world's most disaster-hit country. According to the Center for Research on Epidemiology of Disasters, or the CRED, there were 302 disasters from natural hazards worldwide. 33 of them occurred in the Philippines. These disasters from natural hazards cost the Philippines 26 billion pesos in damages and displaced 14 or 15.3 million people. Is the UNDP represented here? I think the UNDP would be able to ascertain these facts. In 2012, the single deadliest disaster in the world was Typhoon Bofa, or as we know it to be, Pablo, which left 1,901 people either dead or missing in the Philippines. And up to now, we are trying to recover from that tragedy that hit Region 11, or the Davao-Comval area. Our country accounted for 12.5 million victims of natural disasters in 2012 alone, or 10.2% of total global disaster victims. Let me just backtrack a little. It's not in the picture, so maybe you should stop. Way back in 2009, before the Climate Change Act was enacted, which I filed in 2007, Ondoy happened. Both good and bad. Bad that it happened, but good in a way that people became more sensitized and more aware towards climate change and disaster risk reduction. But why am I mentioning Ondoy? Because Ondoy, the adverse impact, economic impact of Ondoy was 2.7% of our GDP, or according to the UNDP, $4 billion, which I don't think the government or through donors could have actually come up with such funds. So we ask, what happens if we do not pay for the cost of reconstruction or rehabilitation? Habagat of 2 years ago, walang bagyo nun in Central Luzon. You will recall, sabi nila, inabot ng siyam-siyam. That is a saying ng ating matatanda. Pag ulan ng ulan, wala naman bagyo, inaabot na ito ng siyam-siyam. Habagat was 0.8% of GDP. That was the adverse impact. So we are actually able to see the negative effect of all these natural hazards when we are not prepared. Evidence from the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC special report on extreme events, suggests that climate change has changed the magnitude and the frequency of some extreme weather and climate events. We're all aware that typhoons are normal occurrences in a tropical country like the Philippines, with some 20 heading our way every year. But lately, the occurrence of destructive torrential rains has been increasing even with the absence of typhoons, as what I mentioned, Habagat and many more. As an archipelago, 70% of our cities and municipalities in the country are in coastal areas. And as a 2013 World Bank report revealed, 74% of the country's population is vulnerable to the impact of natural hazards. These extreme events we are experiencing caused by the warming climate threatens our basic human rights, our right to food, our right to potable water, our right to decent, affordable shelter, and even our right to life itself. It is this human face of climate change that I would like to bring to your attention today. Because many years, in my first term in 98, when I would speak of the environment and climate change, and people would say, tama na yan, hindi maintindihan ng tao yan, hindi gut issue yan, palitan mo na ang iyong advokasya, etc. But I thought that in due time, people would understand that it really is an all-encompassing and gut issue. And I thought that now I would just simplify it on the impact of climate change to various sectors. So climate change actually threatens our agricultural productivity and food security that was mentioned by Lucille. From 1970 to 1990, maybe I have to update these figures, typhoons, floods, and droughts resulted in an 82.4% loss to total Philippine rice production. With continued climate change, crop yield potential is estimated to decline by 19% in Asia, and rice yield in the Philippines by as much as 75% towards the end of a century. Climate change, of course, also threatens public health. A study by the World Health Organization revealed that the most apparent effect of climate change in our country was a sudden increase in dengue, malaria, typhoid cases in 1998, but much more now, when the Philippines experienced at the time El Nino, but now incessant rains. In 1998, there were 40,000 dengue cases nationwide, 1,200 cholera cases, 1,000 typhoid. A decade later, in 2008, the Department of Health again noted the increasing number of dengue, malaria, cholera, and typhoid cases that could be attributed to global warming or changes in climate. Climate change threatens our water security. Experts agree that the combination of rapid population growth, pollution, the destruction and mismanagement of freshwater resources, and the failure to study and anticipate climate variability will create a growing water security challenge. I was talking to someone the other day, I can't recall the figures, but the person said that at least 50%, I couldn't believe, I have to validate these figures, of our population don't have access to clean potable water. If it's 100 million, so 50 million Filipinos don't have access to clean potable water, mag-iigib, magpapakulo, that is a deprivation of our basic human right to clean potable water. At the root of this water shortage is a deterioration of our country's forest areas. As you know, under nature's order of things, watershed areas store water for release into our water receptacles during the dry months, ensuring a continuity of water supply. Yet most of the proclaimed watershed areas have been classified as deteriorated or dying. As chair of the Environment Committee in the Senate, I've been hearing their budget as vice chair also of the Finance Committee for Environment. And we realized that of the 113, I think, protected areas in the country, areas which have not been demarcated, hindi pa namomohon, and because Congress, we have not passed the final forest limits for forested areas, and so there is a problem of encroachment of informal illegal settlers in areas which are considered forested or in areas which are considered under the NEPA's law as protected areas. So the need for us to have an enabling legislation for a 113 protected areas so that they're actually demarcated and protected, and the need for the final Forest Limits Act, which I filed way back in 1998, which has not yet been enacted into law, is essential so that we're able to determine which of these areas really should be guarded, protected, and conserved. According to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, of the country's 15.8 million hectares, 7.2 million hectares are forested. Climate change threatens our biodiversity. Philippine forests, host to a large variety of plant and animal species, have been declared as one of the world's biodiversity hotspots. If global mean temperatures exceed 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, 30% of all species will face a high risk of extinction. Climate change threatens our energy supply. In 2010, if you will recall, Typhoon Bashang in the Visayas paralyzed the energy sector. It also caused a massive blackout in Luzon. This only shows how vulnerable energy-related infrastructure are, and thus a call for the need to climate-proof our energy sector. The measures for improved management and development of our energy generation, our transmission, and distribution linkages must therefore be put in place. Climate change, as I mentioned earlier, threatens our economic growth. Based on the study by the Asian Development Bank on the economics of climate change, the country stands to lose 6% of our GDP annually by 2100 if it disregards climate change risks. However, this same study found that if the Philippines invests 0.5% of its GDP by 2020, not far from now, in climate change adaptation, it can avert losses of up to 4% of its GDP by 2100. Clearly, this is a short-term investment with a long-term eightfold gain. Climate change, clearly, after having explained all that, threatens our right to life. A 1-meter rise in sea level would inundate an estimated 129,000 hectares of land, affecting 2 million people. The warming climate aggravates floods, droughts, super typhoons, and they regularly strike us with their attendant savagery. All of this kill people, destroy property, upset our own production and planting schedules. They undo all the development gains. And I think it was Lucille who said in our hearing, while we have had an increase by 1,000-fold of the budget of flood control budget and flood control infrastructure, but it's actually just rebuilding, right? Is that what you said in the hearing? Rebuilding from what was lost or destroyed, brought about by extreme weather events. We should welcome it if there's an increase in our budget for infrastructure if it's to fortify areas which are not yet affected. Kaya lang it's rehabilitate at reconstruct nung mga nasira na. And so that is not a good mark for our development. Ang ating investment ilalagay pag nasisira lang. There must be an engineering shift in terms of how we must do this so that our limited resources can be focused not just on rebuilding what was lost, but on building and fortifying areas which could be vulnerable as well. Given these far-reaching implications of climate change, we clearly have good reasons to be concerned about this issue. In terms of legislation, we have enough laws, policies needed to help us build communities that are disaster resilient and adaptive to climate change. I can just give you a rundown of the many laws already available, and you can actually access them on the website. The Philippine Environment and Impact Statement System, the Marine Pollution Control Law, the Clean Air Act, which we authored way back in 1999, the Clean Water Act, which we authored in 2003, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Law, my baby, RA 9003, I'll talk to you about it later, the Renewable Energy Law, which is so important, the Environmental Awareness and Education Act, the Climate Change Act, which created the Climate Change Commission with Vice Chair Sering and President Aquino as a chair. We have 2 other commissioners, which is mandated, as she said, to do the National Action Plan, to also help local governments in their local action plans. The sister agency of the Climate Change Commission is the NDREAMC Council. I'm sure you mentioned that earlier, brought about by our Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Law, which is the OCD. The Office of Civil Defense under the DND, Department of National Defense, is a secretariat of the NDREAMC Council, which was born by the NDREAMC law. So with Lucille in the Climate Change Commission and her partner, supposedly, the NDREAMC, the head of the OCD, they should help each other because climate change and disaster risk reduction should follow the same direction. They should help each other. And we also had the hearing just yesterday with the OCD, which is a secretariat of the NDREAMC Council. We have a Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act, and the act creating the People's Survival Fund, which is the funding mechanism of the climate change law. Because the first time the climate change law was enacted, I had this funding mechanism, but the People's Survival Fund came much later. So the number of environmental and climate change laws is no guarantee for effective action. In fact, the UN has lauded the country's laws on climate change and disaster reduction as the best in the world. However, the UN also noted that the challenge is to translate national policies, plans, and programs into local action with measurable gains. It is now more than 12 years ago since the Solid Waste Management Act was enacted, but the NEDA noted that in 2012, only 9 out of the 17 LGUs in Metro Manila have submitted a solid waste management plan, and only 414 of 1,610 LGUs nationwide, or 25.7%, have complied with the national plan. We need to ask why some LGUs can comply while others cannot. We need to understand what enables action, since only through effective enforcement that these laws gain their true meaning. But there are good LGUs that actually comply. Camotes Island in Cebu, San Francisco, the recipient of a 2011 Sasakawa Awardee of the UNISDR for their Purok system, where they developed the discipline needed in proper waste management. They actually segregated waste at source, recycled and composted, no trash segregation, and no collection policy. The other one is Hinatuan in Surigao Sur, that's your region. Maybe you know this better. I don't know if that's the same mayor, but they just did simple, the clogging of canals, they cleaned their surroundings, etc. They were the 2010 Zero Basura Olympics champion. We can look also into the experience of a small town in Iloilo, Alimodian. Well, some barangays saw fissures and they followed the geohazard map. To make a long story, linikas ng mayor noon ang mga tao, nung nagkaroon ng bagyo at gumuho, walang namatay dahil siya ay sumunod. So, these are simple, basic, doable things. Barangay Andap, for example, in Compostela Valley, kung alam lang nila na purple yung area ng barangay na yon sa New Bataan, sa Comval, bago man dumating ang bagyong Pablo nung panahong yon, dahil hindi naman sila sanay sa Mindanao ng bagyo, ay sana hindi linikas doon sa barangay na yon, barangay hall, ang mga tao at hindi kailangan namatay kung ang Mines and Geosciences Bureau ay napamahagi ang ating mga pag-iintindi ng geohazard map hanggang barangay level. So the biggest challenge in the fight for a climate and disaster resilient nation is really to build LGU's capacity to implement our laws, bearing in mind the preferential priority for proactive measures. That's why I ask the MGB, DNR, the OCD of the NDREAMC Council, and Secretary Sering of the Climate Change Commission to work together so that we will have not only regional but provincial up to barangay DRR CCA workshops to engage our people to understand and implement doable laws that we have done. And we know that disaster impact should be evaluated in public investment planning from the national to the local levels. It is imperative for the government to submit to the discipline of disaster and climate risk sensitive development planning. We must also encourage private companies to come up with their own business continuity plans so that business affected by disasters can resume operations in the least amount of time. We can enjoin the media, which you are doing now, to actively assume their social roles, which is actually what you're doing in the Social Good Summit, as public conscience, development educator, change driver, as enhancing public awareness and knowledge as a key to building a culture of safety and resilience. In every disaster, there is a huge opportunity to change the mistakes we've made in the past as an opportunity to move ahead. This will require a new level of commitment and collaboration among government agencies, LGUs, the private sector, media, civil society. Let us start with concrete, doable actions. Sabihin nyo, ano bang pinagkasabi ni Loren? Ano ba ang kayang gawin? Simple po, clean our drainages, segregate garbage at source, clean our rivers. Kung sino ang mayor, sagot mo ang basurahan sa lugar nyo, sagot nyo ang ilog nyo, sagot nyo ang iyong waterways at esteros. I'm doing helping in the implementation of the Supreme Court decision on the cleanup of Manila Bay. I know that it is a gargantuan task, but we intend to meet with the head of the task force designated by the Supreme Court, that's Justice Velasco, with the 13 agencies that have a budget to clean up the bay. That's a different story. I see my wrap-up sign here. That's not part of my speech. I just wanted to tell you about that. Ano pa ang pwedeng gawin? Plant and grow more trees. Sabi na, ginagawa na yan, but plant more trees and really stop all forms of cutting. On every vacant lot, plant trees. Set up rainwater catchment basins so water is stored during the rains and used during the dry season. Update our dam protocols dahil marami ang namamatay pag tulog ang tao at nagpapalaya ng tubig na wala naman early warning na sapat sa mga tao na nandun sa downstream. Remember, ang mga dam na ito ay hindi dapat kalaban ng tao dahil ang mga dam ay dapat makatulong para magkaroon ng enerhiya, magkaroon ng tubig at irigasyon. Hindi para makapatay ng tao kung hindi updated ang ating mga dam protocol. We must also relocate, that's political will, our urban settlers living in vulnerable places to safe and livable areas. The forces that threaten our people and the development of our country must be met with resolute will and sustainable solutions. Strong political will at national and local levels can help bring about the big change we want to see. Reducing disaster risks, adapting to climate change are highly important to the world now, especially to developing countries like the Philippines, where disaster risks abound, and to the poor and the marginalized who are most affected by disasters, our indigenous people, our urban settlers, those who live in vulnerable areas. So the issue before us today cuts across age, gender, ethnicity. Without a united front against disasters and climate change, we could do little to minimize the risks. So now is a time, I think, where we should redefine what development actually means. Does develop mean a 7 or 8% growth of GDP, or the quality of life where vulnerabilities are actually lessened and risks are actually lessened? And so on that note, I leave you today. I guess we still have question and answer, but what I'd really like to do was for us to actually assess what development actually means. Is it just double-digit growth statistics, but the quality of life of our people? We're suffocating from the pollution of our cities. We're actually living with the stench of the base, and ang mga lawa, ang ating mga ilog ay marurumi, at pinapabayaan lang natin na ganoon. Ang ating mga factory ay nagpupollute at binaviolate ang ating Clean Air Act na nandyan, pero walang bahala ang tao. Ang segregation ng garbage ay pinapatupad lamang ng 1/4 ng ating LGUs. Ang climate change action plans ay hindi pinapatupad dahil maraming dahilan kesa walang pera, etc. So we must really analyze what development actually means. But deep in my heart, I think that we must look at development bearing in mind the quality of life of the poorest and the most vulnerable populations. Thank you very much for listening. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Sering. Senator Legarda, please come up to the stage.
Okay, so it's time for another question and answer portion. It's like a beauty contest.
There
That's
you
what I'm
go.
used to hosting. All right, so if you guys have any questions, please do feel free to stand up. Yes, we have a question here.
Please introduce yourself.
They'll get it. Hang on. Yes, I gotta run.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Alexa, and I would just like to ask, address to Secretary Siring and Senator Legarda. You've mentioned already in your preview, in your slides, about the effects of climate change in terms of health. For 2012 alone, are there any other updates that you can mention about the effects of climate change in terms of health in the health sector?
Well, Senator Legarda mentioned about the increase in illnesses. In fact, one of the things that we've seen also, that there's now reported cases of dengue even in summer. So, sinasabi ko, buti pa ang lamok nakapag-adapt na, ang tao hindi pa. Pero isa yan, so really when the survey came out, we had a World Bank Commission survey this year to see where we should be working on in terms of awareness. 8 out of 10 said they've been affected by climate change, but 63% said they're not doing anything about it. And then of all those who were interviewed, 90% of them said that their biggest concern is health. So I guess because when there's an event like a typhoon, it doesn't end there. After that, hindi natin nakikita yung mga dengue. You don't want to die of leptospirosis, malaria. So those are the case, mga stories na hindi pa na-highlight. Ang lagi lang talagang medyong nag-trigger ng so much emotion are those are people in the streets that you know are dead. So hopefully nagkaroon pa ng more awareness at least on the part of health issues.
Yes, I think that it's a challenge to be able to connect climate change and health because health is really a very gut issue. But when we speak about climate change, di ba, sa sobrang tag-init, heat stroke. Hanggang mga magsasaka sa Region 2. At saka, I wish I could show you, kulang ang panahon, more photos of scorched earth, of dried cornfields that I went to in Cagayan, and dried scorched earth in Barotac Viejo or Nuevo in Iloilo years ago, na ang mga magsasaka ay sinasabi, talagang ito ang epekto ng climate change. Pero maliban doon, meron silang kwento na mga kasamahan nila na nahihimatay daw. Hindi nila alam, siguro, na dahil sa sobrang init, nahi-heat stroke. Apart from that, yes, the increasing number of dengue cases. Dati season na lang ang dengue. Ngayon, all year round, nangyayari ang dengue. In fact, unfortunately, my son had dengue. 7 days we were in the hospital and I was so scared because dumaki na ako ng ganito, tumanda ng ganito, awan ng Diyos, siguro resistant ako sa dengue dahil I was born in flood-prone Malabon. Baka anak ko hindi sanay, no? So, pati anak ko na dengue. So, increasing dengue cases, heat stroke during the hot, dry summer months, and the warming temperatures. When we connect climate change with health, I believe that that is where people will act more and to engage on the issue. Simple lang eh. Kung malinis tayo sa ating kapaligiran, maski ganong, hindi naman kailangan na nakatira ka sa subdivision eh. Maski sa barangay mo, mag-segregate lang ng garbage at source. Basura na lang. Ihiwalay natin yung nabubulok at hindi nabubulok. Tapos yung mga nangangailangan, sabihin nila, ibenta yung plastic, lata at bote. O di may pang sigarilyo na si mister, di may pambili na ng cooking oil si misis. O, sigarilyo nga, hindi, anti-smoking oil. No, joke lang. Ibig ko sabihin, hindi, anti-smoking. It's just a joke kasi nga, parang may pambili ng tanduay si mister. O sige na nga, at saka pambili sigarilyo. No, it's bad habits. Those are vices. I shouldn't have, okay, erase. The bloggers, erase. No, it's just, I'm being, di ba sabi nila, sige, benta nyo yung bote, lata, plastic, at meron na kayong pang-allowance nyo ng konti. What I'm saying is that then it will make it a cleaner environment. Actually, simple. Bakit hindi kayang gawin ng bawat household yun? Tapos, yung mga esteros at canals na marurumi. Nung nangyari yung sa Marikina, forgot the area, yung Chuchi Foundation, sinong staff ko nandito? anong lugar sa Marikina? Yun, mababang pinakamalugar na ano sa Marikina, na lugar sa Marikina. The Chuchi Foundation of Taiwan were actually cleaning the esteros on their own. If a foreign-based foundation can do that, perhaps we can do it. All barangays, all LGUs, the DRR officers perhaps can be assigned along with the PENRO, the SENRO. Okay, so there are many things that can be done that can connect it to health. I mentioned about Malino, I mentioned about cigarillo, which is bad for the health.
You erased it already.
I erased it. So, kumbaga sa television, ano yon? Erase, edit out. Maling example. Kasi I'm the author of the anti-smoking law. No, kasi it's a joke. It's a joke. No, it's a private joke. O sige ho, yun na, ibenta na niyo yan. Di may pang bisyo na kayo. Ganun, that's the way they talk sa kanto. Minsan I'm too casual and...
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
We
very
have
important
room
information.
for one last question over there.
Good morning. I'm Gladstone from Dasal. My question is for both the ladies. Ma'am, how can you comment on the critique about climate change wherein it is promoted by northern countries? One of the things that we should also remember is who holds the technology in order for us to be able to adapt and to lessen our carbon footprints. That's where some of the criticisms comes from.
That's why I try to study everything I can. Because we don't know if there's an invisible hand that's going around here. Because if you said you're right, if we push for a green economy, and we're talking about technology-based, whose technology are we talking about? That's why when I mentioned in my talk, I said, let's look at these opportunities because there's a lot of skills here. We'll have a lot of these materials. If we can do this sustainably and using our own materials, then it can create a lot of jobs. That's why we're careful, and even in our negotiations internationally, one of the things we push for in terms of a position in the Philippines together with other developing countries is on technology transfer. We know that it is not our fault that these emissions are growing, right? But at the same time, they give us money, they lend us money so that we can buy their technology. What we're fighting in negotiations, if you want to do technology, show us a transfer that will ease access to credit by the poor, at the same time allow us to have this technology develop in our own country and keep the cost lower so that everybody can use it. Rest assured, we're very serious in our negotiations. We're very careful of this discussion. And me, as the lead of the delegation of the Philippines, we're going to Warsaw, Poland again this November to go again and discuss this. And we hope that we can really show our force in terms of voice. The Philippines is all over these committees. Governor Joey Salceda of Albay is now our member on the Green Climate Fund. My colleague, Commissioner Yab Sanyo, is a co-chair of a long-term finance. Even our own Filipino negotiators, I think because of our command in English, allows us to negotiate in behalf of other Southeast Asian countries. And we're very careful of this, and you're right. But if we're going to go green, it's because it's not on their terms, but ours.
Just a follow-up, ma'am. Is government also funding development of local technologies that supposedly green?
There's a lot, Department of Science and Technology, but I think one very rich resource would be the academe. The reason why we finished the map in record 6 months is because we engaged Xavier University of Cagayan de Oro. We brought in UP NIGS of UP Diliman. We got in MSU IIT of Iligan, so that they would now, because I feel that we should not be relying all the time in Imperial Manila. We've been accused of that. So this is where the academe can come in, and there's a lot of studies there, unfortunately, are not being scaled up. And if you know anything, we'll be glad to know them, and so that we can continue to promote it, with the help, of course, of Senator Loret.
You'd be surprised, thank you, Lucille, for that. You'd be surprised, sometimes we don't need very expensive or complicated technology. You talk to Tony Oposa, he'll tell you how the rainwater catchment works, how he did it in his backyard in the lot beside his home. You know, there's a 1989 law on the rainwater catchment basin, which should have been implemented since then by the DPWH, which, hearing I asked, are you doing this? And they said, ha? May batas bang ganun? You'd be surprised. Maliliit na simple. Pangalawa, ang DOST ay maraming sinasaliksik at maraming naiimbento ng mga simpleng teknolohiya na ginagamit na natin. Siguro one time, maybe the DOST can present to you because I spoke during their Science and Technology Week. Nandun lahat ng mga inventors, nakakatuwa. At yung kanila naman paggamit ng mga mapa, if there is the MGB, Mines and Geosciences Bureau of a DNR, meron naman DOST, yung kanyang LiDAR mapping. Maybe you can, I'm not a technical expert, but they showed me how they were able to map, let's say, Region 10, Cagayan de Oro, and they know, pag ganitong kalakas ang ulan, ay ganitong lugar ang babaha sa CDO, Misamis Oriental, at ibang parte ng Region 10.
I think they call it exposure.
Exposure ang tawag
exposure
doon.
database or building.
Secretary Montejo explained that to me. I forget the name of the other technical people with him. And then, now, in Ondoy, we did not have the Doppler radars, hindi ba? Or limited. I don't know how many we added since 2009, but a government has installed more Doppler radars to measure the amount of rainfall. Kaya ngayon, mas na may measure na ang amount of rainfall at ang DOST Pag-asa rin, mas madalas ang kanilang pag-update sa mga darating na bagyo, and they can already project, I think, a typhoon coming 7 to 10 days before. Kaya sinabi ko nga, if the projection is 7 to 10 days before it comes, and we already know the areas which will be flooded historically, we already know the urban settlers, illegal settlers, which in vulnerable areas na dapat estero, tinayuan ng bahay, pinatituluhan, o maski walang titulo, nandun sila. Dapat ilikas na ng lokal na pamahalaan forcibly dahil mamamatay sila or maapektuhan pag sila'y nandun. So kayang gawin kasi enough na yung warning eh. Kailangan lang ilikas na at maghanda na tayo pag darating yun. Kaya bagamat wala tayong maraming pera para sa teknolohiyang napakamahal, it's simple, traditional best practices ang ating maaring leksyon eh.
Sumbong ko na lang, ma'am. Bumaba ang budget ng DOST this year. Pakitingnan na lang. Para may witness ako.
Bumaba rin ang budget ng OCD.
Kami rin.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not complaining, though.
Magkano yung budget nyo?
Wag na, ma'am. Pero,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
ladies. Thank you. Many thanks, Senator Legarda, Secretary Sering.
And for someone who says she's not used to making people laugh, I'd say that Senator Lauren Legarda, she did a very well, good job of making all of us laugh here.
Thank you, ladies. Our next video comes from New Bataan in Compostela Valley. The story is about a man named Dante. At that time, Rappler went to Compostela Valley 3 days after the disaster. When we walked into Compostela Valley, we found out that there were still bodies lying around in the area. The president was at the evacuation center, but 3 blocks down, there were still bodies down the road. So when we walked in, what we saw were bodies laying down, 18 bodies across the road. And this is the story of Dante, a man we found who was looking through everybody and trying to find his family.
Nung nangyari yung trahedya, wala ako dito. May mga nakaligtas na kapitbahay namin doon. Tapos ang sabi nila, yung lahat ng pamilya ko raw, nadala sa ilog. Nagbabakasakali lang po ako na sana buhay pa po sila. Pumunta ako sa munisipyo, tiningnan ko lahat, yung mga dala na patay. Tiningnan ko sa mga korinarya, wala pa rin sila hanggang ngayon. Bumalik ulit ako dito dahil may mga bagong nakuha na patay. Tinitingnan ko baka sakali na may isa na makuha ko para mapailibing namin na mapayapa siya. Hihintayin ko hanggang matapos dito. Pag sumusuko na dito, hindi na sila nagre-rescue. tatanggapin ko na lang po kung ano nangyari sa kanila. Magsisimula. Kung paano magsimula. Tatanggapin ko na lang kahit masakit.
Such a tragic story. How are you able to handle being there in situations like that?
You do it because you have to do it. And I think that's how most reporters do their jobs. Dante lost 18 of his family members after Pablo, including 3 of his children, his wife, his father-in-law, son-in-law, everything. So we never saw Dante again, and we suspect he's still haunting the funeral parlors, looking for a body to bury.
All right, well, now it's time for us to speak about solutions in technology. I'd like to bring on stage here Google's product manager for Southeast Asia. He acts as the voice of the C Asia user to the product teams within Google. Please welcome Andrew Mliginshi.
Hi, so everyone must be still having some energy left. I know it's close to lunchtime, but I wanted to, I'm very happy to be invited here today to get to talk to everybody a little bit about some positive solutions. So we've mentioned lots of really exciting, interesting things so far this morning. And I'm privileged to tell you a little bit about some of Google's crisis response activities. And it's kind of exciting and it's kind of uplifting, so it's good news. My name is Andrew. I'm a product manager for Google. I look after Southeast Asia. I'm based in Singapore. I'm originally from Canada, but I've lived in the region almost 7 years. And my story in crisis response starts back when I first began based in Singapore, looking at Southeast Asia, and Ondoy came to Philippines. And Eileen Apollo, who you'll hear from later this afternoon, my colleague at Google, she was our only Googler in the Philippines at the time. She, of course, knew exactly the magnitude of the crisis and was raising the alarm within the company and so on. And between us and many other volunteers, we tried to kind of arrange things so that we could organize some information on the internet, use Google's power and the ability to host things, and make it possible to find information that people needed. Now, we were kind of being scrappy. We were being a bit ad hoc. Right? We'd ask for help from different people in Mountain View in different parts of the world. And yeah, it was satisfying to cobble some things together. Now, the good news is that over time, Google has gotten a bit better at this, because when we were doing this thing ad hoc, we told ourselves, boy, wouldn't it be good if there was a kit? Like, we're inventing this as we go, but it'd be much better if it was repeatable. So over time, actually, Google itself has managed to get itself so that we have extended some crisis response tools, and I'll tell you a bit about how that story started, and then a little bit about what it consists of. But I think that this is kind of what all of us here today are hoping to do for the Philippines, right? Is that if we're preparing now, while everything is good, this is the moment to get things right, so that when something happens, as it inevitably will somewhere, we're already prepared. So, okay, this is a little bit about the power of how technology can help within all of this in all of this situation. So here's where Google really the story kind of begins, especially for the crisis response program, especially, and for Google it kind of triggered in the Haiti earthquake in 2010, which was a massive humanitarian crisis, of course. And one place where Google was able to make an impact straight away was our ability to have sourced excellent quality satellite data. So there are lots of, there are satellite photography providers, and Google has got relationships in order to evaluate them, to purchase them, and even to help to ask the companies to maneuver the satellites over the areas. So they're able to very quickly acquire, license, and even do the technology to get the photographs. You have to kind of do some processing to stitch them together and make them appear in the right place, and then publish them so that everyone could see the nature of this damage. And what this enables us to do, I mean, it looks like it's just sort of looking at shock and horror, but actually, in this case, or agencies like the World Bank are able to look at some of this satellite imagery and use it for figuring out where's the damage. You can actually do an assessment, and you can do things like figuring out exactly where the refugee camps are and enable people to find them. And even now, this is where some of the power, if you take information and put one kind of information here and another kind of information and juxtapose them, put them together, 1 + 1 can equal 3. Because here you can have locations of clinics and locations of refugee camps. And of course, it matters that you know which one is near you and where you should put a clinic near where people are, and you should tell people where the clinic is if they're already there, right? So by juxtaposing and putting all this information in one single visualization, it actually has a multiplying effect in terms of the benefit of it. So all of this is kind of where Google can be useful. Now, Google's overall mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So in a crisis situation, there's some things Google can't do. Google doesn't know how to manufacture tents. Our engineers are not much good at distributing food. We have big cafeterias in Mountain View, but that's not a scalable way to feed people in a situation like this, of course. Generally, right, Google is only good at a few certain things where we would like to try to contribute. And so in this sense, it is helping to organize all the information that may be out there from different sources, be it governmental, be it news, be it private people, juxtapose it, put it together, so we have this 1 + 1 = 3 multiplier effect, and then host it in a very public, open, and scalable way. And so this is really where we can pull everything together and provide some value. And so this is what it's like. This is the idea, is to make this critical information really valuable. So in fact here, this is an example of how really we were, the crisis response team, where we'd been doing things ad hoc before, kind of turned into a proper kit in Haiti. So here what we've got is a landing page, a Google landing page for this particular disaster, which incorporated all the information about how you can donate, where you can help, information like we saw of the refugee camps and the information and so on, put them all together in one single place that can support it when there are millions and millions of hits coming to this website, that can actually bring together from one concentrated place all the different resources and organize them in a way. So this is really the kind of the critical point where you can pull it together and host it. Now, later this afternoon, Eileen will show a little bit more of some of the details of it, but I wanted to kind of touch on how the whole thing fits together. So, okay, you may say, great, Google makes a landing page, but during a crisis, it's hard enough getting on Wi-Fi even in this room when there's so many people. When there's a crisis, like, really, does the internet actually still work? And the answer is, surprisingly, it often does. So here's an example from 2011 in Japan, after the terrible crisis there. This is an open letter of thanks from a user in Tokyo, who said that even though many things, their desktop email systems weren't working, their phones, their SMS happened not to be working, but they could use Gmail. They were able to access the internet. And so in many cases, it seems surprising, but that actually the internet is amazingly robust. Here's an example of the earthquake in Chile. So these spikes are the daily, everyday, how many, the traffic, right? So at night, of course, the traffic goes down, and the little dip in the middle is the middle of the day when people are away from their desks and going to lunch. You can actually see the shape of lunchtime on the tracks. So on this particular day, of course, was a catastrophic day, but you can see when it goes down, it doesn't go down to 0, and it quickly rebounds because people are able to very quickly use the internet. So the point here being that, yes, the internet is not as fragile, in fact, it's very anti-fragile. Because if we think about what's the origin of the internet, right, it was developed for defense technology. The original technology of it, a lot of it was built around DARPANET, which is this US military attempt to make things robust for communications. So the idea was that the US didn't, if you wanted to transmit something from one computer to another over a network, if there's only one cable, that's a single point of failure. The whole internet is built so that if you can't find one, you can search and find others. So even in this case, if you think, well, in Philippines, it's all very well to talk about Japan, but Philippines has less infrastructure. Okay, that may be so, but look at Haiti, which is really a worst case scenario. Even under that catastrophic, massive earthquake in a place that's incredibly underdeveloped like Haiti in the first place, in this case here, what they found was there was a cable that failed during the quake that went to there's a cable that went to the Bahamas. That one failed. But others, there was microwave radio towers that were still operational. There were several ISPs that were, in fact, still able to operate either communicating within the island and even get internationally. So all of this point being, even in the case of a big crisis, yeah, actually the internet does keep working, or it can often still be working. So it's very valuable. One last example here. This is during the Haiti crisis. Massive drop, of course, in the amount of traffic that we see, but it didn't hit zero, and very quickly people are using the internet to find each other, to find information that they need, to tell each other that they're okay, tell each other they're not okay, and use this as a central communications point to get things around. Now, important also to note, right, is that even if you can't access the internet, everybody else who's not directly affected can and needs to know things. So here's an example of during the Chile earthquake. It's maybe a bit hard to see, but this massive spike is the time when there's a massive spike here. Another one for the Japan earthquake, where people would search for tsunami, a gigantic spike around the moment when there's this big event that causes people to be interested in that. And then this other example that I list a screenshot of down here, Person Finder. This is a central place, Eileen will show it properly, but there's a central place where basically you can say, if you're looking for people who may be lost, you can report the name and last location of someone you're looking for, or you can report the name saying, I am this person, or I know where this person is, and so you can connect each other, which is a critical use case. So all of these things, even if, for example, you are affected and you can't directly reach the internet, but maybe you do have SMS or phone or radio or something, by having the internet as a central place where you can collect all this information, then people on the edges can still access it, even if you yourself might be temporarily cut off from directly accessing it. So the reach of the internet is gigantic. And one more example of that reach is on the homepage of Google, which is typically the number 1 or the number 2 most popular site in any given country. When there are critical events like this, the team changes the front page to have a notice that gives someone critical information about some major, often literally earth-shaking event that happens for people. So that's kind of how the technology is actually robust. The technology has all this reach. So okay, let's get a little bit specific here. What are the things that really we can use the technology to do? So in fact, when there's a big crisis, there's kind of a couple major use cases that people have. So one of them is someone to say, I've been affected by the crisis, but I'm okay. And so you want to tell other people, I'm okay, you don't have to panic. That's one. Other people say, I'm affected by the crisis, and I'm not okay. I need to know where to go, I need help, I need to know how I can get somewhere, right? So the people who are themselves affected need information. Then the other side of the equation is people who can help, and they need to know where to go. They need to know how to get there. They need to know who has the most urgent needs and how to organize things. So all of those things come together most easily on a map. And so here's an example of a Google crisis map, which the Google Crisis Response Team assembles when there's an event of the kind of magnitude. So here actually what it's showing on this screenshot is this is embedded on the Denver Post, right? So there's a standard website you can go to on Google, but anybody else who is having traffic, a likely place that somebody might go, you can embed this map, the same common map, inside there, so it can be freely distributed around the web. So it's embeddable and shareable. It's accessible, meaning it'll handle the amount of traffic. That's one thing Google can handle, is if there are millions of people hitting a website, that can bring down a lot of servers. But Google is equipped to be able to handle large spikes like that. So that's one thing that we can do. It can keep it fast and responsive, even with very large amounts of data and a lot of traffic. And of course, all of this can be accessed on desktop or on mobile. So all of this, what it does, it pulls together a lot of critical information, satellite imagery, fire perimeters, evacuation zones, flood levels, right? We can pull all this together and display it. Of course, the trick is we have to have that information in the first place to assemble it. And that, a lot of it is what we're here for today. But anyway, so once we have it, this is one thing we can do with it. Another thing we can do with data is this public alerts location. And Google tries to amalgate, to bring together all the different public alerts from different organizations. So it could be about disease outbreaks, it could be about extreme weather, it could be about flooding, other events that come from all different places. So there's kind of a standard reporting protocol for events that people can put them all together. And with this here, we can do this organization where we bring together all the different alerts, superimpose them on a map, and make them much more easy to consume when they're reported this way. So this is so we have the maps and we have this the public alert event system, which is another way that we can, in a large scalable way, bring together public information and put it in one place. And then here's Person Finder, which I alluded to. Here it is, the Japanese version. And this one is kind of astonishing because you can really, there's examples in Japan where there were people stuck in shelters, and they had actually been writing the names of who was there on whiteboards, without being aware that there was this internet system. So what people did is they would take photographs of these whiteboards and put them on Picasa and share them to each other, and then there were volunteers who would transcribe the names. So somebody else far away could say, well, okay, even though I can't reach them, even though I can at least look up the name and find out that this person is in fact safe and he's at this location. Right? So this is kind of what Person Finder is all about, and by doing it, it really lets us get there. So okay, what do we need to make all this stuff possible? Let's just sort of put the last couple pieces together. So this is what we can get, right? How do we do it? And what is our mission here today when we're trying to accomplish these things? So during this crisis here, when the water is almost up to the basketball net, that's not the moment to be trying to learn XML, right? Now is the time when we'd be planning out how to do it, right? So we should be planning now and figuring out how do we do it. So what do they have to do? One really important thing is to figure out how to make this data be open. For example, it can often be that some information, such as the location of clinics or the location of power stations and so on, might be kind of hard to get at, not for any real reason, just sort of bureaucracy, right? Who's the person that has to say, okay, under what is the copyright of this data? Should we open it to this and that? They could be complicated. They're legitimate things. Now, during a crisis, that's the last time you want to be running around trying to arrange that, right? So ideally, we find all the sources, we find out what is the information that people need, and you get the sources ahead of time so that in the event that something happens, the people who know they're going to have the data already have the protocols, they know how to transmit it. They've already got the rights arranged so that it's going to be free and open to share. These are the kinds of things that will be critical to have on hand, ready to go in the event of a crisis. Places like where there's going to be power, how do you track them, the landslides, and so on. Now, of course, Google can help host them and put them together and show them in a good way, but Google ourselves, it really relies on the people who actually know these things, the government agencies, the individuals, the volunteers, the NGOs. This is where it really comes from. Our role at best is to put it together, organize that information. That's something we can do. So when you do that, of course, you need a common standard. So there's a couple of common standards. Like I mentioned, the Common Alerting Protocol. That's a global internet standard for reporting something significant, like some alert. There's things like KML. That's a Google standard for map information. So there's several open standards, and the more we stick to those, the easier it is to pass information around from one organization to another and have them all smoothly mesh together. And then the final thing is that all of this really counts on having volunteers who really do the heavy lifting, right? So we can help organize the information and put it together, but in the end, it's the people on the ground who are going to be delivering the food, laying the sandbags, reporting on the flooding, reporting on everything, right? So all of this is really just to empower the many millions of heroes who are really doing the work. And so by organizing the world's information, we can help each other. One critical way that we can help each other is through volunteering to do MapMaker. And this is actually what I wanted to do. Many of you, I'm sure, have used MapMaker or seen it. In fact, how many have used MapMaker ever, or first of all, used it? A few, okay, good. Know what it is? How many know what MapMaker is, more or less? Okay, good. So this would be worthwhile to show a little demo, because a lot of people see, but I'll just take 2 minutes to show you what MapMaker is. Basically, it's like Wikipedia for maps. So it lets you create and edit the maps of, well, in this case, of the Philippines. Okay, so what this is here, if you just go to google.com/mapmaker, this is a publicly open, you just have to log in with your account. So this here is, all of these maps are actually user-generated, human-generated. Now what I can do is I'm going to select, I'm just going to pick an example road segment here. All right, this street. So I've just selected that street. I lost the selection, there we go. Next. Now what I can do is I can edit it. So the idea is that the people who live there are the people who know best how it is. So a lot of Manila is very well mapped, but still most of the Philippines is not well mapped. Many cities, many towns are not mapped. And in fact, there are map-up organizations. There's Google student ambassadors set up here who can show you how. And so this is something that anyone can do, can sign up and map any area that you know. If you come from some part of the world where, some part of Philippines where you know this is the building, this is the name of it, this is the road, you can look at the satellite and trace the shapes. This is critically, vitally important information for people when they are at a time when it's necessary for rescue. So I won't actually edit that, but in fact, anyone can edit. They're community moderated, right? So if I made this edit, if I changed the name of this road, somebody else would say, well, this guy actually, my edit wouldn't go live automatically because I haven't earned my credibility in Philippines. Somebody else would look at the road and say, actually, no, reject, right? So it's hard to vandalize, but if you've done enough, if you've made a few edits, you're quickly trusted, and then your edits go directly live. So you can edit, you can add new listings, you can add schools, add shelters directly into MapMaker. So this is a free, open tool that anybody can contribute to, and that's something we can do now, long before there's any sort of crisis. So there it is. There's MapMaker. I just wanted to very briefly show you that quick demo of it. And so this is it, basically. Before we're in this dire situation, this is our opportunity to find the right information and make sure that we know how to get it in an open standard, in an open way, and think already now about how we can share this info so that in the event of a crisis, Google and others can help organize this information and then really help mobilize those individual heroes who are the ones who actually make it all happen. Thanks very much. That's all from me from Google. And we have time for a couple of brief Q&As, I think.
Yes. Thank you very much, Andrew. Questions for Andrew? We have a question right here.
Hello, I'm Ange from the Girl Scouts of the Philippines. I'd just like to ask one question. Our organization is currently concerned in the expiration of the Millennium Development Goals. I see that Google is one of the most effective way to disseminate information. But you see, people will not Google until something happens. I mean, about crisis, about preparedness, until something happens. So is there any tool or what is Google's role in where, so that they could empower people to prepare before the crisis?
Part of it is, I think, events just like this, right? Google by ourselves doesn't have the ability to really do these things, but as working with great partners such as the folks that we're here with today, and this is how we do it, right? We're one of the logos on this stage. There are many, many people here whose logos are not here, but who are, like yourselves, who are critical members of it. We can do our bit, but I think it is, it's happening, right? So I think actually, we're trying to enable, but I think what's happening here with the leadership that's coming from media and from individuals and NGOs, that's the way it's going to happen. And I think it's working. We're starting to.
We have time for one more question. Right there.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm George Dadibas from the Green Convergence. I would like to know how can Google effectively help in implementing environmental laws in the Philippines, for example?
In preventing environmental loss?
In implementing.
Oh, implementing.
Like the laws that were presented earlier by our good senator?
Well, so if Google's role is about organizing the world's information and making it accessible, as a platform, one thing that I think Google can help with is to enable individual people to really kind of do some of this crowdsourcing we've been talking about earlier, right? So if there is, for example, satellite coverage of rainforests that are supposed to be there but get logged, that's a place where we can track things. There are people out there who've made, for example, map-based tracking that shows here's where there is logging happening and you can report it, right? So individuals can keep track of things like that. through things like Google Earth and Fusion tables. These are tools that we make available to NGOs or to individuals who can try and organize some of this. So I think that's probably where Google's role is, right? Is to enable people to, by getting information, making it easy to consume, easy to share, easy to process. Those are the things I think that really does, sunlight is the best disinfectant, right, as they say. So I think by helping organize and shine that sunlight, that's probably the role that we can play.
Thank you. We are told we have a vitally important question for the gentleman in the checkered shirt. So I will break my boss's rule and let you ask your one question.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Yves Gonzalez. I'm a consultant for the Metro Manila Development Authority. I just wanted to ask, who should we coordinate with Google so that we can get live traffic and incident information on Google Maps?
Good question, good question. Well, the good news is so live traffic, the way we typically do, is with the number of people who are using their mobile phones and who are opted in to be anonymously contributing their data. When we have enough of that, that's when the traffic layers go live. So that's one. Now, one other thing that I think is hopeful, we're still figuring out how to do this, is Google just acquired the company called Waze. And so right now, Waze is actually a perfect platform for that, but the acquisition has just happened and they're kind of figuring out how best to work together. The current plan is Waze will keep working the way it works. So I think that's probably our best bet for surfacing that kind of crowdsourced information through Waze and then through the anonymized tracking of traffic.
All right, thank you.
I see why that was a critically important question for everybody.
Thank you. Follow at MMDA.
All right, I'm really sorry, gentlemen. We're running out of time. But right now, we're going to be showing you the Twitter map of today's hashtag 2030Now. I think they're going to show it right behind us.
So colorful. Look at that.
Isn't that pretty?
It's like a painting.
We don't understand it, but I think it's very important. You can all ask Maria later what it means.
This is me right here. Oh, this little dot. Pat, you're over here.
Thank you.
You're the pink one.
Russell will have to explain this to us. There you are.
Oh, hi.
I like your hat.
Yeah, good taste.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is something we do at Rappler. We're very interested in how the conversation continues past the room. And this is one way that we try to keep track of it, is by mapping the flow of information that's happening on Twitter. We actually try to do this with a lot of social media. Today we're looking specifically at Twitter. And what this shows, each dot is one of you, somebody in this room. And we're seeing the connections that happen when you mention another user on Twitter, when you retweet something. So say you tweet at Rappler about how you're excited to be here today. That shows up on the map. And what we're going to do is keep collecting this data. And we're going to keep doing it through the entire Global Social Good Summit. And then we're going to compile that and look at the communities, look at the influential people. And we're going to post that on Rappler.com so everyone can take a look, learn about the role you played in it, how that fits into the bigger picture. Is that an okay explanation?
I understood it.
Great.
Maybe.
Thank
you, Russell.
It's like a nice bedroom voice as well.
I'm just so tired.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on to our next speaker.
I like your map. And your hat. Okay, our next speaker, Patrick Meyer, is the Director of Social Innovation at the Qatar Foundation's Computing Research Institute, where he develops and also prototypes next-generation humanitarian technologies using advanced computing. Unfortunately, Patrick is currently stuck in Qatar. Therefore, he will be hanging out with us right now, live via Google Hangout.
Let's say hello.
There he is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Meyer.
Hi, Patrick. Can you hear us? How about try again? Can you hear us?
I think he can, but we can't.
He said he's having a hard time hearing us.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, I'll do the speech. You just nod if I'm doing the right thing. Today you're giving out $1 million. $5 million, okay.
Okay, see, look at the magic of technology. Can you try to say something?
now?
There you go.
Yeah, there we are.
Hello, hello, hello. Yep.
Yep, we're good.
Sweet, thank you, and thanks for the tech setup here. And so it's a real honor to be here with you virtually, and I really apologize. Really disappointed. We tried it until the very last minute to get me over to Manila, but it didn't work out. But the magic of technology is here, and I wanted to say a very big thank you to Maria and her awesome team at Rappler for organizing this and for going out of their way to help me still participate and listen to the talks this morning. It's been really engaging and passionate, so it's a real pleasure. I'm happy to get started now if that works for you.
Go on ahead.
Sure.
I'll take that as a yes. So just quickly, again, my name is Patrick. I direct QCRI's Social Innovation Program, where we develop free and open source humanitarian technologies. Now, why humanitarian technology? Well, one of the main challenges for the humanitarian community today is the rise of big data, or what I call big crisis data. And by this, I simply mean that the fact that social media is increasingly used to communicate during crises. We know this full well. We've seen this over the past few years. 20 million tweets during Hurricane Sandy, 2,000 tweets per second after the Japan earthquake and tsunami. And we know that Twitter is not the only game in town. There are, at last count, 38 distinct social media channels and counting, and the vast majority of these get used when disasters strike. Now, this vast volume and velocity of information can be as paralyzing as the absence of information to support and mobilize humanitarian response. So we have a challenge here that is like finding the proverbial needles in a haystack, right? And in this case, we're looking for relevant, actionable, informative information in the growing haystack of information. And finding the needles is really challenging because we're talking about millions of social media reports posted online, this user-generated content that just surges during disasters. And we know from the past experience and research that some of these needles, if you'd like, will make the difference between life and death, will actually make a big difference for disaster response and provide situational awareness. And we also know that we don't have all the time in the world to look for these needles, right? As the International Committee of the Red Cross noted almost 10 years ago, access to information is equally important as access to food, to water, to shelter, and so on. But of all these commodities, information is the most perishable. Information is the commodity that will turn bad, if you'd like, that will rot most quickly, because information you get now versus in 10 minutes can make a huge difference. So as a colleague of mine noted on Twitter recently, if you have accurate information that is hours old, you do not have accurate information in the world of social media. That really is the reality that we're dealing with. And this rise of big crisis data then presents a major puzzle to humanitarian organizations. They are completely unprepared to deal with this volume and velocity of user-generated crisis information. They were never geared to doing that. And the same is true for disaster-affected communities. They too face the same challenge of having this tsunami of information get posted and generated during disasters. But this is where the notion of advanced computing can help. And this is why I joined QCRI, is to leverage advanced computing to support humanitarian response and to solve this major challenge of big crisis data. So how exactly does advanced computing do this? And what is advanced computing? Well, you can think of advanced computing in two ways. It is a combination of human computing and machine computing. Human computing is simply a fancy word for crowdsourcing or microtasking. And I often say that crowdsourcing is simply a new term for the common saying that it takes a village to do something. On the other hand, machine computing leverages things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that sort of advanced stuff. Now, this may sound like science fiction, and often does to me, but I'm going to share with you some very concrete examples of human computing and machine computing used for humanitarian response. And I want to start with the Philippines, where you all are right now. And we know the story from last December with Typhoon Pablo, one of the worst storms in 100 years to hit the Philippines, devastating very large areas. And we saw the video of individuals really being affected, and these human interest stories really hit to the emotional issue that this is really real. This is not just slides at a conference. These are real individuals losing loved ones in disasters, and that gets really emotional. It's very real, and these are not just tweets. These are not just technologies. It's real life. Amidst this tragedy, we see glimmers of hope. We have examples and things that happen that do give us hope. And I think one of them, for me, was to see how proactive the Filipino government was. Now, I was not in the Philippines at the time. I was following online. And I was incredibly impressed to see the government and other organizations in the Philippines being so proactive on social media. For example, as we saw on Twitter with the government and other groups suggesting and recommending certain crisis hashtags even before the typhoon Pablo made landfall. I mean, I've never seen that happen before anywhere else around the world. So I think the Filipinos are some of the most enlightened, active, intelligent users of social media when it comes to crisis communication. It really is a model for the rest of us around the world to follow, which is why I almost always use this example when I talk about Bay crisis data and disaster response. It really is amazing. Now, in the context of the response to Typhoon Pablo, I wanted to share a word about the Digital Humanitarian Network. The Digital Humanitarian Network is a group that a colleague of mine at the UN and I launched just over a year ago. And the purpose of the Digital Humanitarian Network is to serve as the official interface between established formal humanitarian organizations, traditional players, and connect them and match them with today's new digital humanitarian networks, volunteer-based technical communities that live online, that mobilize online. They're very agile and have great skills and can really move very quickly in collecting and processing information. They act as a surge capacity for these humanitarian organizations. And you can see we have a dozen or so members of the Digital Humanitarian Network, and that number is growing. I refer to this now because 48 hours after Typhoon Pablo made landfall in the Philippines, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UN OCHA, activated the Digital Humanitarian Network. And what did they activate us for? Well, for a number of things. They wanted us to basically collect all the tweets that had been posted during those first 2 days, and then identify which tweets linked to images and video footage that captured the damage caused by Typhoon Pablo. And that's not all. Once that was done, they asked us to geotag this multimedia content shared on Twitter. That is, to find out where in the Philippines these pictures and videos had been taken. And oh, by the way, they wanted us to do this in under 12 hours, which meant they were hoping and expecting us to provide them with the result of this exercise, of this digital humanitarian response, by 0500 Geneva time the next morning. So how did we pull this off? Well, we turned to microtasking and crowdsourcing. As I mentioned, this is an example of human computing. And we used a free and open source platform used for citizen science projects typically, called crowd crafting. And this is basically what it looked like. You're seeing sort of a mock-up of the interface. These digital humanitarians, these digital humanitarian volunteers from the Digital Humanitarian Network would go to our dedicated and customized website, and they'd see a tweet that was posted during the first 2 days. They'd have this displayed. They'd be asked to click on the link to see whether that link actually was to a website that maybe included pictures, maybe to Instagram, TwitPic, or what have you, or YouTube, or what have you. And so they look at the pictures. In this case, I'm showing you an example of, okay, yes, this link actually links to 2 pictures that clearly show disaster damage. So the volunteer then is able to tag and say, yes, there's disaster damage, and oh, by the way, it mentions the location in the content of the tweet. So what happens then is if you click that tag and checkbox, you are basically displayed with a map, a Google map or an OpenStreetMap, and the volunteer then basically identifies where on the map of the Philippines that particular set of pictures were taken. So what was the result of this? By 0500, in fact, just half an hour before, at 4:30 a.m. Geneva time, we were able to send the UN the result of our microtasking efforts that were carried out by volunteers from all around the world using this microtasking platform. And we collected about 100 or so individual data points, meaning individual pictures/videos that we were able to tag as showing disaster damage, and then also to georeference. And the result was this map that the UN created within half an hour of us sending them our data. And this map is incredibly unique and is a source of hope, I think, for many of us who work in digital humanitarian response, because this map is the only map of its kind that is an official UN crisis map that is entirely sourced from social media content, from user-generated content, multimedia content, shared on Twitter in real time, that is then collected by volunteers from around the world and processed using an open source, free and open source microtasking platform. It really is incredibly unique. And this map was shared beyond just UN OCHA with other UN agencies as well as the Filipino government. And from what I understand from one senior UN official, was used to actually inform decision making. Certain decisions were taken thanks to this particular map, which would not otherwise have been taken without this crowdsourced crisis map. Now, one of the reasons I'm so excited as well about the potential of microtasking as demonstrated here is, well, the best analogy is through throwing darts, right? Is the fact that these microtasking platforms have built-in quality control mechanisms. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. So with what we did during the Philippines, what we did actually was we showed every single tweet was showed to at least 3 different volunteers. So it took 3 volunteers to vote, if you'd like, on each tweet. And only if 3 separate individual volunteers tagged a particular tweet, like voted on that particular tweet as saying that that tweet links to an image that captures disaster damage, did we actually then take that particular image and then share it and georeference it and share it with the United Nations. So we use this idea of triangulation between digital humanitarian volunteers to ensure a high quality data output that we can then provide for our disaster response colleagues. Now, when we did this in December, honestly, to be completely honest, we were making it up as we went along. We had barely 12 hours to figure out how the heck we were going to do this, because we basically ended up microtasking over 20,000 tweets, over 20,000 links. And it took a long time to get the technology up, to customize the platform, to get the folks ready to tag the images and so on. So it was not perfect. It may sound impressive, and in many ways it was, and our volunteers really rallied, and we were able to provide data that helped the UN. But maybe it was still there's still a lot of room for improvement. So when the United Nations at OCHA came back to me a few months later, earlier this year, and said, okay, this was amazing, this was great, this was really incredible for us to do this, such a rapid disaster damage assessment. We want to do this again in future disasters. Are you ready? And I said, absolutely not. We're in no way ready to do this again. This was just very quick and dirty, and no, we're not ready. But given the interest that the UN and others have had in doing something like this again, I decided to make sure we would be ready. So we set up a project in partnership with UN OCHA called micro mappers that we are actually launching next month, but you can already go to micromappers.com, that will streamline and the process of microtasking for disaster response. We are developing and have already developed highly customized microtasking apps geared directly, specifically for disaster response. And you can learn more, as I mentioned, at micromappers.com. And they're also going to be completely free and open source. And it's a project that I'm very excited to collaborate with Maria and her team at Rappler to see how we can make best use of this in the context of the Philippines. I think it has a lot of promise, and you can learn more at micromappers.com. So another reason I'm really excited about the potential of microtasking is that once you've got these microtasking apps, there's a lot you can do with them. You may be familiar with the reCAPTCHA spam filter, right? Now, the beauty of reCAPTCHA is, yes, it certainly serves as a spam filter for your emails and for other login pages and so on. And as some of you may know, the spam filter reCAPTCHA also processes information that is useful as a result. So these words that you see displayed often come from text that's been scanned. For example, from the New York Times, and this is how the New York Times was able to transcribe its entire archives going back decades, is by people typing in these words. They serve a purpose. So what we've done at QCRI is we've basically taken the reCAPTCHA model and we've created a disaster reCAPTCHA model. So here you see the official email login page for our UN OCHA colleagues. And what we've done is we've added a reCAPTCHA plugin below the login page that you see here displayed. And what this asks UN colleagues to do when they enter their email in order to filter for any spam and hacking attempts is to identify which of the 5 pictures, there could be more than one, shows disaster damage. So it's the same idea as micromappers. We're pulling in information, images from Twitter during disasters, and we're displaying it in this plugin, and we're asking people who are logging into their emails to tag which pictures actually show disaster damage. And if they get it wrong, then they have to do it again, just like a normal reCAPTCHA. So it's another way of tapping what is called sort of cognitive surplus, people who have extra time on their hands, or they have to log in anyway, so they might as well click on a picture. And it can get even more fun and interesting than this, because as you know, these massive multiplayer games, online games, have hundreds of millions of users. In fact, we see statistics that people spend 1 billion hours online in total around the world playing these online games every week. I mean, this is a huge amount of time that is spent online playing games. And what we want to do is we want to tap that. We want to work with these online gaming communities to have them play a role in digital humanitarian response. We know, for example, that the online gaming community with the World of Warcraft game is very active when it comes to disaster response. After the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and after the major hurricane in New York, Hurricane Sandy, they mobilized. They created a campaign to raise millions of dollars for those who were affected by these tragic disasters. So they are socially conscious, and they want to be more socially conscious. So my colleagues and I have launched something called the Internet Response League, and we just want to show you an example of how it would work. We're collaborating right now with one major online gaming company to see if we can partner with them for this. But let's take, for example, World of Warcraft. Let's say you have logged in and you're asked, do you want to join the Internet Response League in case we need your help during a disaster? And you say yes. So when you're playing a game and a disaster happens, let's say an earthquake in Los Angeles, well, you get a message that basically says, hey, an earthquake has happened. Do you want to volunteer for the Internet Response League to support, for example, the American Red Cross? Now, let's say you say yes, in which case you see this pop-up plugin from the Internet Response League, IRL, that asks you to rate the severity of damage that you see in a picture. These pictures, again, are taken from social media in real time and then automatically filtered and uploaded to the IRL plugin. And then you can rate and say, okay, yeah, this picture has lots of damage and it shows fire, or it shows electricity lines that have been damaged, and so on. So we're exploring this further, and again, it shows you the potential of using human computing, or what's also called crowd computing. If we can develop these free and open source plugins for email use, for micromappers, for online gamers, we can really bring this whole village, this online digital village together to look at all these pictures. And if we're talking about millions of online gamers, they can tag millions of pictures in a matter of minutes. Imagine, we could have done what we did in the Philippines in 60 seconds if we had micromappers, if we had the reCAPTCHA plugin, and if we had the Internet Response League. Now, crowd computing on its own is not necessarily the full solution, which is what brings me now to this idea of machine computing, right? Crowd computing provides you with filters, but people do get tired eventually, and you want machines to come in. So a data set that looks really big, because the big data is relative, actually for a computer will not look as overwhelming, will look quite small. So this is where I turn now back to the slide on human computing and machine computing. And I mentioned machine computing includes machine learning and natural language processing and so on. So, and I promised that I would give you a real world examples and not just talk about science fiction crazy terms. So I want to give you an example from the major tornadoes that swept through Oklahoma a few months ago in the US. And this was the largest Category 5 tornado ever recorded in the history of the United States. Category 5, miles wide, and completely devastated, as you can see the picture here, the city of more large neighborhoods around that. Now, you may know about the American Red Cross. They have a digital operations center, which is really the only one of its kind around the world as far as the international community of the Red Cross goes. They're incredibly innovative, incredibly forward-thinking, incredibly experimental and open to experimenting with new technologies. And this digital operations center uses different platforms and uses digital volunteers to monitor social media and to respond during disasters. The catch is they're doing this pretty much manually. So on a good day, i.e. when there are no disasters, they're monitoring and manually reading about 5,000 tweets a day. Now that's on a good day. When a disaster happens, that skyrockets to millions of tweets, and that's exactly what happened during the tornado in Oklahoma. There were over 3 million tweets posted during the first sort of 36 hours with the various tornado hashtags, and there was no way in heck that they could manage this big crisis data. So they got in touch with my team and I at QCRI and said, hey, you guys are developing some automated machine computing solutions for this. Can you help us automatically identify people who are posting needs on Twitter in the aftermath of this tornado, and also people who are offering help, because we're seeing both, right? People needing help, and obviously people who are less affected and who want to offer help. So we said, sure, we'd of course be happy to help, and what we did was use machine learning. Now, machine learning may sound like a new term, but it's been around for more than half a century. It started becoming more popular sort of in the 1950s and 60s when computer scientists were interested in trying to teach computers how to play chess and how to win at chess. And we know now that these computers are very, very sophisticated. And the idea of machine learning is basically to teach computers the ability to learn on their own, right? So what we've been doing simply is using this field that's been around for half a century and applying it to teaching algorithms, teaching the computer how to find tweets that are of interest to humanitarian organizations. So just as an illustration here, say you're following Twitter with different hashtags, all you have to do with the platform we're developing, which is also free and open source, is to tag those tweets, to check those tweets that refer to, in this case, needs, right? You're looking at the tweets coming in and say, okay, yeah, this tweet is a need, this tweet is a need. And what you're doing by doing that is teaching the algorithm what it is you're looking for. You're creating these machine learning classifiers, which is the technical term. So in a way, it's just like, I like to think, as you can see in the next picture, just like teaching a dog how to fetch a ball or fetch a bone and coming back with the ball, hopefully. And what we've been able to do with the past few months is to teach our classifiers to find all kinds of different information on Twitter. such as infrastructure damage, such as information on casualties and injuries, such as, I mean, basically anything you really want. People, looking for help online and offering help, as well as we can also tell, identify which tweets are written by eyewitnesses, which is obviously really important for disaster response. Now, the accuracy we're getting from all of these is between 80% right now and 98%. But the beauty of machine learning is the more tagging you do, like I showed in the previous slide, the more accurate your automatic classifier will actually be. So it only gets better over time, the more tweets you tag. So this is a project called AIDR, AIDR, which stands for Artificial Intelligence for Disaster Response, which is also a free and open source platform that, like Micromappers, we're looking to launch in the next couple months, so this fall. And the project, like Micromappers, is a partnership with UN OCHA, UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, but these platforms will be free and open source and will be usable by anyone, certainly not only humanitarian established, formal, traditional humanitarian organizations, but other civil society groups, other local communities, and so on. And it's an exciting experimental platform that we are looking to pilot with all of you, with Maria and her team at Rappler and other partners and colleagues in the Philippines and around the world. These are experimental platforms right now, but I'm an optimistic, I'm eternally optimistic kind of guy, so I think this will help us. It'll definitely be better than what we have now, which is nothing in many respects. Thank you very much. You can get in touch with me at any time. I answer all emails, so feel free to email. Everything I've shared with you right now, I've blogged about on irevolution.net, and you can also ping me on Twitter at Patrick Meyer. Thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Hold on, Patrick.
Oh, hey, Josh. Hey, Patrick.
There he is.
All right, there he is.
Okay, we can take 2 questions.
Another awesome hat. Oh, look at that guy. Siguro kalbo din siya, no? Mabuhay mga kalbo. Okay, we have a question in the back. And we have a question from him also.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, you first.
Hi, my name is Pamela. I'm a design anthropologist from Curiosity. So I have 2 questions, quick ones. So I've been interviewing rescuers as part of my research on flooding. And I can see 2 relevant experiences that they consistently tell. One is aggregated visualized data is helpful, and especially pictorial data. But one of their problems is once they receive it in aggregated form, it usually takes about, sometimes as long as 7 hours from them to leave their base to the area that they're about to rescue. And by the time that they arrive, the visual data that they receive is no longer relevant. Sometimes the situation is actually worse or better, and whatever action plan they've prepared for isn't relevant anymore. The second is, one of their biggest problems is prioritizing who to rescue. And that's currently, in the form that they're receiving information at the moment, it doesn't include people who are senior citizens, who are pregnant, families who have infants, families with PWDs. So is there a way to include this data so that it's easier for them to prioritize who to go to during an event of disaster?
That's a really great question, Palma. Really, really important. I'm really glad you raised it. So on information and information becoming obsolete very quickly, you're absolutely right. It speaks to the point of information being the most perishable commodity in disasters. At the same time, information is a commodity that travels the fastest during disasters. So there's still hope here. And the idea, what we're trying to move to, is trying to get from real-time information to real-time response, right? But as you're very correctly noting, real-time information does not make a humanitarian organization a real-time organization, which is why we need a more distributed, I think, networked approach and a bottom-up approach. How to solve this, which leads to your second question, is how do we connect to not just those who are on social media, but other demographics and so on is a really major challenge. And I think it speaks to the fact that while I'm talking about social media right here, right now, radio is still very much the most important widespread technology for disaster response. It's what all of us fall back on when everything else goes down, right? So the idea that it's not an either or, but it's to look at this information ecosystem as an ecosystem, and to look at how we can develop different technologies within this ecosystem to connect the different nodes. Can you connect social media with SMS, with radio programming? There are a number of projects like this that I've followed in for example, in the Central African Republic, in Somalia, that work incredibly well when you start combining these new technologies with traditional technologies. And let's not forget television as well. So it's really about making full use of this ecosystem, this ecology of information technology tools, and making them as interoperable as possible, right? And word of mouth as well is really important. One of the things that happened after Hurricane Sandy in the worst hit areas in Long Island was people didn't create a phone chain, but what they called a face chain. So I would basically be responsible for notifying 5 people, and then these 5 other people would be responsible for notifying five people each as well. So you had this tree of people, but this is all done face to face. So they would go around in the neighborhood to the areas where elderly individuals were living, families and so on, people who were disconnected. It was all done face to face at the hyper-local level. So that's really important as well, and analog tools and offline tools, using flyer, using a bulletin board, a chalkboard in the middle of a village can be really, really important as well. All this it doesn't become less important with new technologies. It is equally important with new technologies. But I have a feeling that you are the expert on this, right? Working at the field level with the communities, and I'd love to at some point now or later learn about how you manage some of these challenges, because there's a lot that we need to learn from your experience in the Philippines and share with my colleagues, for example, in Central African Republic and Somalia.
Thank you. So essentially, there's no silver bullet, basically. It's an ecosystem.
I agree.
Next question.
Hello. Hi, Patrick. I was really interested in what you were talking about with microtasking and real-time response. And I guess my question is, how have you been able to use your experiences and the information you've gathered to really build on this and help humanitarian agencies in risk profiling so that they'll be able to give better responses or even prepare for disasters before they happen?
That's an excellent question. All right, these are super. That's really great, and it's a conversation I want to have as well, because right now, as you're correctly noting, the Micromappers initiative and using human computing has come out of sudden onset disasters, right? Like the Philippines. We'd never done this before the Philippines typhoon, so it's been very much focused on this. Now, I would love to collaborate with anyone who's interested to see how we can use Micromappers for doing this risk assessment, right? And risk profiling, as you mentioned, ahead of time, so we can identify areas that are perhaps more resilient than others, and see how we can build additional resilience in these areas that are perhaps not as resilient. How can we use that information as a feedback loop with local communities, right? So how do you transform this idea of big data, which is a bit sort of abstract, and use big data to build community resilience? Is actually an area that I'm super interested and becoming increasingly interested in, want to try and explore. I'm not an expert in disaster risk reduction, disaster prevention, preparedness, but it's an area that I want to learn about and want to connect with in order to see if we can use some of these technologies. I think ultimately, this microtasking platform or the AIDR platform, they're information management platforms, right? So information management is equally important before the disaster as it is during and after in the reconstruction phase. So I would love to. I don't have all the answers, but I'd love to have a conversation with you. So if you'd like to get in touch, we can get on Skype today, tomorrow, whenever you'd like, and figure that out together.
Thanks for that. I'll probably get in touch with you soon enough, I guess. Thanks.
Super, please do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick, as well.
Thanks all. Thanks, Patricia. Thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the conference. I'll be following online.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right,
I have a question for you guys now.
go on.
Are you hungry? That's great. But before we eat, I would like to read a monologue. It's going to take just about an hour. It's fine. No, it is time for
time for
lunch.
lunch.
But please stay seated. Okay, you will be served right here. And if you guys want to actually eat at a table, you can proceed to the SGV case room, the Korean case room, the Indonesian case room. Don't ask me where they're at because I have no clue. And there is a strictly clean as you go policy. Matter of fact, there is a garbage Nazi out there. If you leave garbage, you will be electrocuted. So please clean up your mess.
All right, stay in your seats. We have one last video for you guys to watch. It's very short, so we'll be rolling. It's from Katiil, Davao Oriental.
Dito po kasi sa barangay namin, San Rafael, sa bayan ng Katiil, halos lahat magkamag-anak po. More or less, 3,000 po ang nakatira dito sa barangay San Rafael. Karamihan po dito ang trabaho ng mga tao, mga magsasaka po. Mga 10% lang siguro, mga tricycle driver. Yung iba, mga negosyante. Yun nga, never-ending history sa Katiil, nagkaroon ng bagyo. Mayroon mang bagyo bumisita sa amin pero hindi naman masyado kalakas ng nangyari. Inaantay talaga namin na may bagyong darating pero hindi kami nag-expect na yun ang mangyari. Ang hangin kasi yung umiikot tapos parang madidinig mo, parang nangingitim ang hangin. Pa iba-ibang direction yung tinig niya eh. Akala ko katapusan na ng mundo ito. Kinaumagahan, ang mga tao, mahirap mong kausapin. Parang natulala sila eh. Kausapin mo, parang nagtatangahan eh. Isa lang ang namatay dito. Pero sa the whole barangay San Rafael, umabot yata ng 6. Ang nawawala ngayon, ang nasa estimate nila, aabot yata ng mga 20. 2 beses lang kami nakatanggap ng relief. Yung iba pa nga, hindi. Iniisip namin, may pag-asa pa ba tayo? Wala naman tayong maaasahan dito sa mga niyugan natin. Wala na eh. Nagkukintuhan nga kami, sabi ko, babangon tayo kahit papaano. Babangon tayo.
Not since the invention of the wheel did something change life at such a fundamental level. 2 words rewrote the rules. Social media.
Right now, the whole world is working on. I'm going over.
Internet video becomes the most watched medium. Historic events reverberate.
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
Check. Okay, guys, please remain seated. You will be served in your seats. Just present your claim stubs, or your food stubs, and enjoy your lunch. And when we come back, we'll have plyometrics and yoga 101, taught by my friend Tony here. All right, enjoy lunch.
Changes the way people help people.